Comment has been closed. If you have a public comment on any other issues that you would like to discuss or share with the county commission, you're more than welcome. However, we will not hear public comment on any wind energy things at the beginning. At the time when we do discuss the first reading of the wind energy ordinance proposal, we'll do a 15-minute opponent and we'll do a 15-minute proponent. You can choose who you want to speak for 15 minutes and that will be done, and then the other option will be the other opponent will get the same 15 minutes, and then that will give us time to make sure that we understand what's going on with the proposed wind ordinance. Without further delay, Patty, would you please take roll?
Dan.
Here.
Don.
Here.
Wanda. Here. Brian.
Here.
John.
Here. Do we need to have any reasons for anyone to abstain as a commissioner for financial reasons?
I do not.
Hedrick does not.
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
At this time, we'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Don, second by Wanda. Any further discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And now is the time for public comment. Public comment is a time for persons to address this body on any subject. No action may be taken on a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been specifically included on an agenda as an item upon which action will be taken. Each person has up to 3 minutes to speak. There shall be no personal attacks against the members of this body, county, staff, individuals, or organizations. The chair has the authority to enforce this policy. Failure to adhere to these rules may result in forfeiture of the remaining speaking time. And I just want to remind everyone that we will not hear public comment at this time on wind energy. Do we have any public comment? Hearing and seeing none, public comment is closed. I guess we got about 7 minutes that we're gonna. We can move on with Yankton context.
Yeah, we can do anything.
And they're here, so. Rebecca, would you like to come to the podium and speak?
Hold on, sir. You're hired.
Oh, don't curse me like that.
My name is Rebecca Meyer. I'm the director at the Yankton Contact Center, and this gentleman is Bob Standen. He serves on our board as our board treasurer. I invited him to come along today to keep my name on, I guess.
Could you just get a little closer to you?
She's too tall.
The Yankton Contact Center has served the Yankton County for nearly 50 years. Being one of the longest running nonprofits in our area, the mission has always been to meet the basic needs of those who come to us for assistance. Our goal when a client comes to us is to address the need that they are struggling to overcome, such as hunger, financial stability, risk of homelessness, utility shutoff, just to name a few. All of the assistance that we provide is supported by you, the County Commission, community members, businesses, and organizations that see the need in our community and see that the Yankton Contact Center is in the business of helping people. Our food pantry is the most utilized program, serving on average 218 households every month. Clients provide proof of residence and identification at their first visit to the pantry of the year. Our software charity tracker that we use is updated at every visit that the clients use the pantry. Food is available once a month on an emergency basis, and the average number of visits per household is 3 times a year. And then the food is distributed to them based on the number of people residing in the house, not the number in the family. The second most reach program we offer is our representative payee services. We currently have 83 clients that are served by 3 staff members. So that averages 25 to 30 clients per staff. Our rep payees create a budget for their clients, pay their bills, provide a personal spending for their needs, fill out all paperwork for emergency assistance, the SNAP program, and their recertification for their rent, fill out all paperwork and accounting records for Social Security on a yearly basis. They also provide a personal connection to the individuals with calls, visits, sometimes reaching out daily 2 to 3 times, if at minimum once a week. We are also the only place in Yankton that offers this kind of services to clients that do not live in a residential setting such as ABS or care facilities.
That's up 45%. And just a non-number with this, well, I guess it's one number. To give us some perspective of what that means, the contact centers had to stretch their resources to the point where households, they come in for assistance on food and it's some toiletries as well. They're giving out now only 1 roll of toilet paper a month per household, not per person. So the need is increased, the resources are stretched, and we really appreciate that the county has been supporting this organization for decades, and we count on that to be continued for the needs that we have.
Any questions for Rebecca O'Reilly?
I have a question, and I may have missed this early on in the presentation. But is the food pantry have other states, like folks from Nebraska, folks from Bonham, folks from Clay? Do they use our food pantry? And if so, are they included in the numbers?
Yes, so when people come to us, we do not serve Clay County at all because they have a fantastic food pantry and it's open multiple days a week. You will see on the handout that we do serve people from those other counties, but it's the one time that they come to us, and then we give them the information for food pantries within their county or within their township. And that's just like our policy, and we make note of it in our system, so if they were to try to return, we would then require that they have a Yankton County address.
Do you verify that with an ID? How do you verify?
Dan, for our at-home viewers.
I don't know how it can be.
Speak into the
It's on the
microphone.
agenda later to fix this terrible microphone system. But how do you verify that somebody is from Yankton? ID card, piece of mail? or-
Yeah, so we require a photo ID and something to prove their address, whether it's a lease agreement, a utility bill.
I get, because I appreciate Commissioner Fox's point, it's when they spend Yankton County
Emergency lending, I was at 12, maybe I guess it's both years is 12, is that like capped, is that the
Any other questions from the commission? I really appreciate, Rebecca, what you've done and like Ryan said, brought us this information to update us on what's going on downstairs. And really appreciate that. So thank you and continued success.
I would move to approve the report. You don't? Oh, we do?
We already approved the quarterly report a couple weeks ago.
Happiness is here. We just did that.
We just got, moving on through the agenda, Will Kennedy. Will, are you here this evening? Will not being here this evening, we'll move on to the right-of-way utilities for bridge removal. Is Mike here? We don't know.
Nice try.
Mike, tell us about the right-of-way thing.
All right. Right away and utilities for a bridge removal project, we applied for a grant to assist on removal of the bridge over on 429 Avenue, north of 305. The bridge has been out since somewhere around 2011. Time for it to go, I guess. I guess all we're looking for is approval and signatures on these right-of-way and utility certificates.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Dan, second by Don to approve the right-of-way utilities for bridge removal. Any further discussion needed?
Have we gotten this grant yet, or was this just?
Yeah, this is, we already got the grant, this is so they can bid let it for next year.
No, I really, just for the viewers at home, I really appreciate you doing this and applying for the grant to help remove these structures. It's been there since 2011. It's really a danger and it needs to go. And this helps stretch the tax dollars even further by applying for these grants. So just thank you for doing that.
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
And then, just approval to go out to bid. Bike path I had in a 5-year plan for this year to get resurfaced, sand sealed, not resurfaced. So we're gonna want to advertise to go out to bid on that, and then also I had in the budget for this year, for new road broom. So,
Or a what?
road broom, power broom,
Oh.
sweeper. We have one at the shop right now that we've been demoing. I think it'll fit.
And that's a budgeted item.
Yep.
Okay. Do we need a motion to approve that purchase?
For him to advertise.
Move approval of the request.
A second.
Have a motion by Dan, second by Ryan, all in favor?
Aye.
Discussion? All in favor, aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Send Paul in next.
Yeah, tell Paul to come on in. Paul was anxiously waiting to get this over with.
Welcome.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight, it is that time of year again to renew our LEMPG, or Local Emergency Management Planning grant, which allows us to receive half of our salaries and some other funding from the state to our department. As of right now, it expires, or our new contract comes effect October 1st of this year and expires in September 20th of 2025. We're currently running on 2024 fiscal year.
That's for yours and your deputy.
And the
salary.
deputies, yes, all salaries have been honored.
That's, and for the public, that's a great program that we apply for. It pays for half of the salaries for emergency management. So some counties don't take advantage of that. I'm glad we do.
Yep. Yeah, so, right now, if you'll see in there, the amount is to be determined. It's that way every year. They don't know what they get from the feds. We may see more than 50% or 50%, or it'll be adjusted, but we'll know that before we go into the fiscal year. But they need to know who's all gonna apply also, because if the 66 counties don't all apply, that means there might be a little bit more money that can be spread out through the rest of the counties. So I'm here tonight to ask for your signature to go ahead and approve this LMPG grant for the fiscal next year.
So it takes 60 pages to
42.
describe the requirements
Yep.
and the things that you have to do
Yep.
for this grant.
Yeah, they're all in here. It's
How
all
many
in.
dollars do we get in the grant?
4.
That's the federal government for you right there.
Normally.
Last year, we were right about $80,000. That we
So it's
received from the
1,000 pages.
Right.
That's why some counties, smaller counties like Fall River, they don't even bother to apply because it would cost them more resources than they get out of the program.
Every quarter, we are required to send in what we had done every month in that quarter. And that's whether we meet with you guys, we go to do some public safety stuff, we go to a fire call where somebody was displaced, we do some flooding stuff, they want to know all that stuff every month. And you'll see in this form here, it talks about the quarters, and there's a column, and there's the response branch, the recovery branch, everything. So we document every day, we have a ledger of what was done that day, and then that's how we be able to go back and figure out what we did, who we talked to, and all that stuff.
There's absolutely dozens, several dozen requirements that you have to keep up in order to be in good standing.
Yep. Our emergency operation plans have to be updated, contacts, we work with the townships, we work with the towns, all that stuff in the event to make sure. We work with District 3 a lot to help them make sure there's our resilience plans. I know you guys are working on a 5-year plan, there's things, it's all kinds of stuff that we're always trying to, not that we want to be always involved in it, but it's something that it's part of our job to make sure that it falls within them requirements.
I move approval of the SDLE MPG grant.
Second.
Got a motion by Wanda, second by Don, to approve this grant approval. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thanks for
And
your patience.
I
in
just
going through this.
want to make a comment also is, during the recent flood that we had, the whole southeastern part of the state had, from that huge rainfall, 5, 6 inches of rain. Governor Kristi Noem was here in Yankton and gave kudos to Paul for the emergency management plan that he has put into effect and brought that out, and implemented that on the day of the floods. I just want to compliment you on that and give you kudos, just as Governor Noem did to you on that day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Why we got you here in South Dakota, federally recognized, can you just tell?
I got a note here, this is a footnote here. As they spent read in the paper last week, we did finally get a federal declaration. The week before that, it said that FEMA had run out of money and they didn't know what they were going to do. Well, they must have found another tree with some growing funds on it. So they were able to fund this declaration. So now South Dakota has been declared. Unfortunately, there were 24 counties that were affected, but only 4 counties got the individual assistance. And it was very unfortunate that we had one family, that home was impacted, does not qualify because of that individual assistance. We didn't have enough of it. But the 27th of August this month, I spoke with Gary. We were having a meeting at 9 o'clock in my office with 4 of the townships and Mike Slotic and Beth to go over how now this to move forward to start collecting the monies. Because we were right about $2.9 million in damages throughout the county. And so we're going to start now that process of how to recoup. So the feds will pay 75%, the state pays 15%, and the county responsible for the other 10. This year we learned a lot of it from the 2019 stuff, but a lot of the administrative fees that we could have been charging for weren't being, well, we did get money back, but now all that's being documented where we're accumulating the costs as time goes on. So yeah, this next week, we'll have our first meeting, and go from there. So we'll see what happens. You bet. Questions, anybody?
Just thank you and good job. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. We're just a few minutes early right now, so we'll do the Yankton, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, plat.
Can we do that early?
Yes. Good evening. I have one plat tonight, a replat of Yankton Track 1 in the northwest quarter and northeast quarter of Section 1, Township 95 North, Range 54 West of the 5th Principal Meridian, Yankton County, South Dakota, hereafter to be known as Yankton Track 2 in the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 1, Township 95 North, Range 54 West of the 5th Principal Meridian, Yankton County, South Dakota. They basically just added some ground to the existing plat.
Basically, that plat's coming
More into compliance, correct.
I'd move approval of the request.
Second.
I have a motion by Dan, second by Wanda. Any further discussion on this plat? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Motion carried. Let's move down to our
Second.
July 29 and August 6 meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the July 29 minutes?
I would move to approve the July 29, 2024 meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion by Wanda, second by Dan, to approve the July 29, 2024 minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Appreciate a motion to approve the August 6th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Don, second by Wanda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries to approve the August 6th meeting minutes.
Yes.
6:30, I guess.
I'm a little late, but the one thing for the action 24254 AUD, I think that was just to follow the state reimbursement rates instead of increasing the mileage rate. We were just going to follow the state rate.
Except, yeah, that's the only thing we changed.
Yeah. So I don't know if we need a motion to reopen the minutes because that's what that should say instead of just increasing the mileage rate, because I thought the agreement was we were just going to follow the state rate.
No, we're gonna just increase it, we're not gonna.
Increase it to the state
We
rate.
were just gonna increase the mileage.
Right. Yeah, not follow on with the state, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I've got 6:30. We'll move on to first reading, definitions in Article 26, wind energy conversion system.
So this is a continuation of the first reading to consider the recommendation to adopt Yankton County Ordinance 2020, amendment to Yankton County Ordinance 2020 definitions, Article 26, wind energy conversion systems per Ordinance 24 ZN06.
As mentioned earlier at the beginning of the meeting, tonight I would open up public comment for 15 minutes for opponents of the proponents of the proposed ordinance change. And Wanda, will you keep track of the time? And you can have one person speak for 15 minutes, you can have 3 people speak for 15 minutes, or however you want to do it. It's going to be 15 minutes, and then we're going to go to the opponents. So now's the time to speak. And forever hold your peace after this.
My name is Lori Sletton. I'm a 5th-generation farmer from Yankton County. The task force did a thorough job evaluating the needs of our county. My father was born in a little brick house on Broadway here in Yankton. If my family still owned that property, this board would not issue a CUP to me to build a hog barn in that place. Broadway is zoned commercial and residential, not ag. Just as hog barns do not belong in town, industrial wind developments do not belong on our farmland that is owned for ag, nor do they belong on land near people's homes. Industrial risks should be limited to areas zoned for such issues. People and animals are not allowed to live in industrial zones. Industrial wind does not belong in farm country. For those of us who were raised in South Dakota, we took civics class in 8th grade. The most important fact we learned about property rights was this: my rights end where your rights begin. In farm country, we have a saying that we actually live by: good fences make good neighbors. Our fences keep our livestock on our property so they do not damage our neighbors' crops. But fences do not keep out toxic debris or leaks. Fences do not keep out industrial sound and vibrations. Fences do not stop fires and flying debris. Fences do not stop EMF or splashing red lights. Fences do not stop industrial wind development from changing the temperatures and moisture level, thus damaging the crops for many square miles. In reference to industrial wind, property rights must be treated just like we treat waterway management in our county. I am not allowed to make a change to a waterway that will flood or stop the flow of water to my neighbors 5 miles away. The setbacks in this Article 26 are necessary to protect non-participating residents because the dangers of turbines do not stop at fence lines. Participating residents have a right to endanger their own health by building their turbines on their own land, but they do not have the right to risk the health of the neighbor's family, livestock, or crops. Last week, I gave the zoning board 50 signed petitions from Turkey Valley and Mayfield Townships asking for the zoning board to deny the Swan Lake Wind CUP. In addition to the 150 signatures I gave you at the last meeting, today I give you 96 more, asking for setbacks. The people of this county have shown up by the hundreds to let you know, you who are elected to represent them, know that we do not want industrial wind in Yankton County. You will discuss the definitions in the article today. I have a definition of a word from the Commissioner's mission statement for you to ponder: integrity, firm adherence to a code of moral values. Incorruptibility is Webster's synonym. Thank you for representing the people of Yankton County with integrity by listening to us and protecting us. And these are the petitions.
Mr. Chair, just point of order, I guess if people have documents, if they could get them to Gary so that there's a record of it.
Tanda Baker. Now, in the last meeting, it was advocated that only one measurement for sound was to be used. It was very strongly advocated that only the dBA was to be utilized to measure sound. There's a significant problem with that, as it excludes all of the accurate measurements for all frequencies, specifically below 200 hertz, including infrasound, which is between 0 and 20 hertz, and low frequency noise, which is between 20 and 200 hertz. Asking for this test is a glaring undermeasurement of the true quality of infrasound by using only the A-weighted measurement tool. This tool will generally only reflect the audible noises that are maintained by the windmills, but it does exclude the measuring of the harmful or the inaudible content, especially when used with industrial wind turbines. The balancing measuring tool is the C-weight. It helps measure environmental, low frequency noises and sound levels. In the measuring of sound, let's measure sound, which includes both the A and the C, to accurately reflect the intense and at various frequencies, the noises when applied, specifically, again, looking at the low frequency noise spectrums. I will be emailing each of you a 179-page document that is written by a doctor in Iowa. He is a cardiologist. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Dr. Johnson. He has a significant practice treating people who have been damaged by the wind turbines. We cannot argue with the doctors who are treating this. They know what they see, they know the causes. He also talks a lot about the significant impact to the sleep that is caused by the low frequency infrasound, which, by the way, you were suggesting to not measure. There are sounds these are the sounds that cause such annoyance and impacts on the body and the brain, and to the residents that they begin to develop mental health concerns as well, such as anxiety, depression, PTSD symptoms, suicidology, which can also then lead to more impulsive behaviors by our residents. These are the things that are caused, and they are proven to be caused by the low frequencies, the infrasound that you do not want to measure. These sounds also negatively impact our heart rate variability, which is a very important part in our body. It directly impacts the respiratory distress in our bodies. We need to be aware of this. The people in Iowa, Minnesota, parts of South Dakota already know this. In the email, I'm going to include a second thing to you, and I'm going to send you a website that highlights the renewable rejection database. Okay? This is kept on the restrictions and the rejections of both solar and wind projects in the United States, and is tracked it for over the past decade and more. I encourage you to take a look at that and to understand that as a whole, as a nation of the United States, there are more rejections and much stronger setbacks being placed in counties and states alike. People are waking up, and they're seeing the dangers, the lies, the half-truths, and the snake oil that is being attempted to be forced upon us by the industrial wind companies. I ask that you join in and join forces with those people who are awake and accept Article 26 as provided to you by the task force and the Planning and Zoning Commission. You have been informed, you are aware of the risks, and you are here to represent the county, not out-of-state wind companies. Thank you.
I have a question, just real quick. Renewable rejection rate, was there a third word?
Yep, renewable rejection database. And I will email that link to you.
Barbara Stussel. Some on this board have alluded to the fact that anyone can find anything on the internet to support whatever side you want to address. That is so true. But really, don't you think that the residents who have come to voice their concerns about this issue can discern between what is actual experience or simply opinion? Know the difference between scientific studies that are independent versus studies that are performed and paid by special interest groups? Many, if not most of this group, come to you from their farms. Anyone that has been in agriculture for a few years or a few generations have had to be honest, hardworking, and intelligent to have survived this long. They have integrated new practices and been willing to invest in current technology. They have survived so many lessons in life that when they see something that is counterproductive to their livelihood and dangerous to their environment they've protected for years, they know to their core it is so. Through this process of updating these zoning regulations, these people have been very congenial and open-minded. They have shown that they are able to and have been willing to compromise. An example of this is they went from asking for a 5-mile setback for non-participants, but would acquiesce to 2 miles if they must. Any further proposed reduction in setbacks to a mere few feet is a slap in the face. It was stated that these overflowing rooms of people had little merit in these meetings because they are just a little drop in the bucket of the total population of Yankton County. I'm quite sure you rarely, if ever, see a majority of the residents of the county in attendance at your meetings. But yet, you've been able to make decisions on various other issues, protecting those few who come and let you know their concerns. Certainly, you do recognize that these in attendance at these meetings represent a large percentage of the people who will be directly and negatively affected if you do not pass zoning laws to protect them. I am asking that you stand tall, be leaders in the state, allow yourself the gratification of knowing that you have protected your county and the people you represent. Do not ignore the hard work of the task force and the planning and zoning committees. Make small changes for clarification, but don't gut the intent of the proposed regulations. Don't send a message to everyone in this county that you've decided to trade the safety and integrity of this county for outside entities that won't live here, won't trade here for long, and have no emotional ties or love for the land and the lifestyle in Yankton County.
Hi, my name is Tina Lee. I want to visit with you about flight tonight, not the flight of eagles or the birds that come in contact, but the flight of the medical emergency helicopters and the crop dusters that fly over my shelter belt. These aircrafts are low-flying aircraft. Helicopters tend to fly in straight lines to carry their patient to the Sioux Falls hospitals in a timely manner. Every second counts. If windmills go in flight, helicopters would have to divert. Lives could be compromised because it's not just us, it's the Swan Lake area. This affects the city, the whole city of Yankton, and the residents of the surrounding community, whether it be somebody brought in from a car accident from Springfield. This is a monument, could be a very monumental consideration because every life does matter. It could be yours. And I do have, may I approach a 20-second video? This is an aircraft flying over my acreage Saturday. The air conditioner just shut off. There's an airplane. Just flying over. It's one of the sprayers, but we have medical flight. So that is just one thing that I would like you to consider.
My name is Rodney Sutton. On the proposed one I see would be 2 turbines would be placed in the same section water level just over the pedestal. On the 1/26/1991, I stated frag wind around a big pile is sleeping in some black ice and roll. I spent 5 weeks in a coma and 6 months in the hospital. I've been disabled for almost 33 years. People with brain injuries often develop seizures. These seizures are commonly triggered by blinking lights and flashes of light. Because my brain has to work so hard to do everyday tasks, I'm very sensitive to distractions such as vibrations, sounds, flashing lights. Because of my disability, I need protection of setbacks. People with brain injuries, Parkinson's, PTSD, epilepsy, EMF sensitivity, environmental illness, anxiety, and mental illness need setbacks to protect us from those adverse reactions of sound and light and vibrations of the EMF. With rivers that are closer than 5 miles from our property lines, we need much greater, we need the 5-mile setback. Americans with Disability Act requires local government to assure that accommodations are made for disabled people. As people get older, many of them are disturbed more easily by sounds and vibrations. I'm 61 years old. Many of my neighbors are older than I am. 5-mile setbacks are reasonable accommodations for disabled and older people. The task force recognized that the non-participating people of Yankton County need protection for setbacks and include them in the ordinance. Update. Please pass Article 26 with the standards increased to 5 miles. Thank you.
2 more minutes.
I'd like to speak second. My name is Todd Christensen, and what I was wondering, they talk about, when they ask for different things, some days it's Nextera, some days it's Swan Lake Wind or whatever, LLCs. Both of them got the word LLC, and you guys have talked about on the liability issue, they're gonna have deals for decommission. When I formed a business, I get an LLC, and that's for, I would say if you had a disaster, they couldn't go against you. Well, in my opinion, the LLC would be protecting the wind people or whichever one you go to, and they're asking them two different means. It's either Nextera or Swan Lake. I mean, my business got one LLC, and so that's what I don't quite understand is, then you're worried about, or people are worried about the decommission, and then also on the decommission, I asked them last week in meeting, how much money you set aside? They don't know. Two of the fellows that are here, I asked them, we don't have a clue, we don't know. And I said, you don't know? No. If I go to the bank to borrow money, and they're borrowing way more, and maybe not borrowing it, whatever, but they don't have no idea. I go to the bank when I borrow something, I gotta have a plan down. But they say they don't know. Two of the fellows were here 2 weeks ago and said they do not know how much the decommission would cost. Well, there's been different figures. I don't know how much it would cost, but on that money, where would it actually be kept? And if they're talking $100,000, $500,000, $1 million decommission, and it was going to be in bonds and whatever, I don't understand all that. I'm not that highfalutin, so I don't understand all that. But where is this money going to be in the county, and who's going to keep track of it?
And what was your name again?
Todd Christensen.
Thanks, Todd.
You betcha. Thanks.
Okay, time has expired on the opponents, so now we will give 15 minutes to the proponents.
Don't everybody rush up.
Yeah.
And the landowners want to speak first.
I'll speak out.
Yep.
Guys.
My name is Roger Hofer. We are landowners in Turner and Yankton County. Some say wind farms are not ag, but without power, there's no modern ag. Just a footnote here. Industrial power is if you have a factory and you have a windmill. If you have a group of windmills together and they feed into the grid, that is a wind farm. So some people have been confused on the definition. Electric vehicles are not a problem yet. It's population. In 1960, U.S. population was 179 million, up 19% from 1950. In 2020, it's 329 million. South Dakota in 1960 was 680,000. In 2020, it's 892,000. And in 22 is 909,000, a growth of 17,000 in 2 years. Some of you have tried to paint a picture of a giant three-winged red-eyed monster that will drive people insane, cause crop failures, livestock mutations, and kill wildlife. A quick note on that, I have a friend who's worked 20 years at a wind farm in Minnesota. His job is patrol for dead birds. He has yet to find one in 20 years. Talked to my cousin, he's an engineer at Black Hills Power. They were questioning the lack of dead birds. So they start planting dead birds to see if their people would find it. In fact, the first windmills were built in Prussia over 1,000 years ago and were later adopted and made famous by the Dutch. Mr. Olson and Mr. Anderson have provided us with much data from years of research in this country and abroad. Not hearsay or opinion, but in writing for all to see. Wind power is nothing new in Yankton County. Landowners were signed up back in the late 1980s and given $500 a year for future construction. Some of you moved in since did not do your research and now cry property rights. How about the rest of us been waiting for close to 40 years for them? Why do you think these ordinances were put into years ago? The cry from around the country is to update our electrical grid. Our dams are becoming close to the end of their lives. Coal mines are being closed. Nuclear has bad safety record, and nobody wants its waste. Wind power for now is the best answer. It spreads our generating throughout the grid to protect us from severe weather and foreign attacks. It helps pay farmers when markets drop. Excuse me. It helps local and state governments keep taxes down, and electric companies when they ensure constant power availability. Next era has complied with the Yankton County ordinance, state PUC to change the ordinance to show extreme undue bias. I ask again, is there anywhere zoning is more strict than in this county? Look to the future.
Sir, I had a question. You own property in Turner and Yankton. Where do you reside at?
I live in Turner.
You live in Turner, okay.
Two and a half these people have been speaking.
Okay, I just
They
wanted
live
to-
where?
I wanted
Turner?
to clarify
Yeah.
that you live outside of the county.
Do you need a screen?
Oh, I'm all good, thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, again, Dr. Chris Olson, PhD in Environmental Health Science, you've heard from me before. First thing I want to point out is that everything I've told you tonight, or going to tell you tonight, I've told you in the past, is backed up by a 52-page document that is submitted to the Planning Commission that you folks have a copy of. All the scientific references, all the other state references and the like. I want to just touch very briefly on some of the things that we've heard tonight and other times. Infrasound, for example, yes, turbines do emit infrasound, they emit low frequency noise, similar to the amount that we have here in the room today. If you were to go to the 5 pages in this document that have on infrasound, you can look for yourselves very quickly from a German state health authority. Together, we, the health authorities in Baden-Württemberg, have come to the conclusion that adverse health effects related to infrasound from wind turbines cannot be expected on the basis of the evidence in hand. There's many references there. Certainly, infrasound comes to a lot of misinformation out there. I would encourage you to take a look at that document again as you're reviewing things. More importantly, what I'm going to touch on again tonight are the setbacks and the sound and shadow flicker requirements that we think are good for your county. Once again, everything I'm telling you tonight, you can back up with the state PUC. Not only does the PUC have the last 5 wind projects were approved over the last 5 years, I was involved in 2 of those hearings. There was 2 other medical physicians that were testifying on behalf of other companies for those, and those were opposition experts on the other side that also. The PUC typically hears about 5 days of testimony for these projects when they come to the decision. They've heard hours of testimony, including by myself and others, on infrasound, low frequency noise, audible noise, shadow flicker, you name it, health effects, psychological, the like. They have come to the conclusion, very similar to North Dakota, New York, Wisconsin, the other states that I've listed here, on the same citing criteria that we put forward to you folks tonight. What I would put to you is, why would we create the wheel here in Yankton County with the state and the state experts and all of the testimony they've heard, literally hundreds of hours of testimony for 5 years, 5 projects recently. Why recreate the wheel? Why not go with the state? That also puts you in a position where you're then at the level playing field with all the other counties in the state that also may approve wind turbines. Short of that, you may as well put a moratorium in. And the reason I say that is not facetiously, is that once you get to these and we start talking about the various levels, these are not levels that are just on the threshold or the cusp that maybe we won't have health effects. These are actually have safety factors built into them, okay? And so therefore, we're not just kind of skating on the thin edge. There's 20 years of research, 20 years of study around the world, here in the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, and all of them are remarkably find the same findings, independent researchers from around the world, conclusions time and again. That's where these setbacks come from. The first I'd like to touch on is noise. And you folks, I think we're doing a great job in your discussions last or 2 weeks ago when we were here talking about noise, various noise levels. The state level that you cannot go to the PUC. So for example, your existing ordinance says 60 decibels of non-participating property line. If I was to take that to the PUC and that's all I was to take to the PUC, they are going to reject the project. Why? Because the state has decided that, so some counties have a 50 decibel at non-participating homes. Even that, I believe it was maybe Coddington or Dual, for one of the 3 counties that the Crown Ridge projects were in. Across all of those, when we went to the PUC, the standard is 45 decibels at non-participating homes. Yes, on the weighted. That also includes the infrasound low frequency noise because again, it accounts for both, all right, as you go through. The 45 decibels is not that sort of threshold that just right above that we're going to have sleep disturbance, health effects, migraines, and the like. In fact, That level's closer to the 50 plus decibels. And what it used to be, for example, in North Dakota, 50 was the state standard. They lowered it to 45 in 2019. PUC here in South Dakota, it used to be standard, that it was a 50 decibel sound in homes. They've moved that down to 45. That's to give two things. One is that little bit of cushion and extra protection to ensure protection of public health and safety, as well as to reduce the sound level to a reasonable level at people's homes and on their properties. If you go below that, this is the old story of Solomon in the Bible of splitting the baby. If you split the baby does die. In the case of the wind projects, if you go much below that 45 or go below that 45, that's the level that was set to say it's a reasonable level, it ensures protection of health while still allowing for wind development. So we would encourage you to do 45 decibels at non-participating homes, 50 at participating. Again, this is not an ordinance for the Swan Lake project. Yes, I'm being paid by Nextera to be here today. I'm paid by many other companies in the wind industry. I've also been paid by the state of Vermont and other counties to help them with their ordinances. So what I'm telling you here today is the same stuff I've said on the road up there up here, same stuff I'm telling you folks here today. So that's on the staff. Shadow flicker, absolutely agree. 30 hours of shadow flicker. Shadow flicker does not cause health effects. It does not cause epileptic seizures. The 30 hours that are in, that was proposed by the task force, by the planning commission, I would keep that in. It's the same thing we have to go to the state with. Okay? Now, if we get to the setbacks, this is where it gets tricky. This is where I know there's going to be a lot of unhappy people with me in the room tonight, and have for the last couple of months. And the reality, though, is that, again, if you were to look at, so I'm now looking at the memo that GoCan provided to you on August 5th, and the table on the other side. Your existing ordinance for non-participating, or sorry, existing ordinance for participating homes is 1,000 feet. Okay? What we're suggesting is you can use 1.5 times tip height or 1,000 feet, whichever is greater. So more or less than the one. I think, Commissioner Heine, you were correct. Like, as the towers get bigger, right now it says 600 feet as a height restriction in your proposed ordinance. I would remove that entirely, but if you want to keep that, I do agree a multiplier on height, a reasonable multiplier on height is the way to go, and a certain distance, whichever is greater. So for the non-participating homes, what we see again, time and again, that has worked at the PUC and has worked around other states and counties, I've suggested you go to 3 times the total height or 1,500 feet, whichever is greater. If I'm in New York, if I'm in North Dakota, if I'm in Illinois, if I'm in Michigan, that height is actually 2.1 times the tip height or 2 times the tip height. So I'm actually suggesting you go to 3 times the tip height, okay, which would be give or take for a 500-foot turbine, it's going to be 1,500 feet. If it's a 600-foot turbine, it's going to be 1,800 feet. And that is, again, just giving that little bit more of a distance. That distance to homes is related to the sound level. It really isn't, with all the ordinances, with all of the state level protection, that's not so that you can see them a little bit less. It's a 500-foot or 600-foot tower. If you're a couple hundred feet further back, you're still going to see it. There's no hiding these turbines. It's not meant to hide these turbines. If there are 50 turbines, in this case, you've got a project proposed in this county of 37, you might have another project proposed at 50, whatever you're going to do in the future. Swan Lake may never be built. You may have another company come in proposing other turbines, right? You're not going to hide them. So it's not about a visual aspect. Municipal boundaries suggested a 1 mile to municipal boundaries. If you really wanted to, you could go with that. I mean, certain counties do different things. Most states will say a mile to municipalities. Where we definitely disagree and I think needs to be removed is the lakes, rivers, and streams. There is nothing in other, typically not anything in other county ordinances or state level guidance for that because it falls to the DANR, for example, to talk about setbacks. You're looking at issues around construction, not having silts in the rivers, lakes, or streams. Where we do see it is if you've got a lake district or a very prominent lake, like in your case, you've got the Lewiston Park Reservoir, the Swan Lake, there's others like that. Maybe a 1 mile setback from those. But if you were to build 1 mile from rivers, lakes, streams, you couldn't build a house in the county. Full stop. Right? You could never even come close to getting a mile away from every stream, river, or lake. Rights of way, your current one is 1.1 times the total height or 1.1 times tip height. Again, that's for fall down, that's for blade failure, ice throw. It's exactly what all the other states have. You've got, they proposed 1.5 times from the Wind Task Force. I have no issue with the 1.5. Going beyond that though is not going to work. Property lines, again, this is where it's key. You can't participate in property lines. Why would you restrict somebody with 2 properties adjacent to both participating? There's no need and there's no other jurisdiction that has that a distance setback between participating property lines. For non-participating, again, they've suggested 2 miles. That's to restrict any build. Again, 1.1 times tip height is what the state looks for. It's what the other states look for. If you wanted to go to 1.5 times, perhaps, you go much beyond that. You just can't simply cite the turbines. Most of those non-participating property lines are going to be cornfields. They're going to remain cornfields. You're not building a quarter-mile driveway for most homes into the back of the section to put a home. Most of them are fronted on roads. Don't protect the corn from that. And again, you've got the other stuff. So with the last couple of minutes, those are the ones that, if anything, what I would recommend, folks, look to the state for guidance. Talk to the state experts, the state staff, talk to the state commissioners. You don't have to believe me. You can talk to them, you can read the 5 decisions. Happy to provide those if you'd like. A couple other ones that NextEra did put in, these are a little bit beyond me, but I'm just going to speak to them quickly, is that they've asked with the decommissioning stuff, that 4 feet below grade, we're taking it to concrete. You don't typically take it to pads. Plow depth's 30, is a couple of inches, right? The 4 feet is to make sure that you take the concrete down, you replace the topsoil that's stockpiled, you can still crop right over it after. And then the other one was the ownership one, which you've heard from the lawyers before, the transfer. We recommend you take a look at that. Ultimately, what I would suggest, commissioners, this is a tough job. I've said it before. This is what next week I'm going to be in Iowa in front of a very similar commission to folks. This is what it's a tough job. I would suggest look to the state and then look to other states. If you look to other counties, sure, I can find ordinances that say 10 miles for a short month. I can find anyone that says 2 miles. Not going to build. I can find ordinances that say 1 mile. You're not building a project. So simply, that would be our recommendation, my recommendation. Follow the science. There's a 20-year history of it. Properly sited wind turbines do not impact public health and safety or welfare. Any questions or? Dan?
Dan, did you want to go first?
I was going to ask, 37 hours there. Okay.
That's the Swan Lake project, yes, yeah, sure.
So if it went to a non-participating setback, how many of those would still?
Zero. So without getting, we could do specifics of that project. I'm happy to pull up the setbacks that are there, but any project, like not just the NextEra project, any project. You couldn't go 2 mile setback to homes or properties. You can't even go 1 mile. You can't even go half a mile. There are some very sparsely populated areas, like in North Dakota, where there's about 40 homes within a mile and a half of the turbine, where you can maybe get to almost half mile to a home. But even that it's very hard to do. Just the way we have sections laid out, just the way that we have homes.
Mr. Chair. Question for you. So our current ordinance is at 60 decibels, and you said the PUC is recommended 45 now?
So your ordinance actually says 60 decibels to the property line.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that it won't necessarily be 45 to the home. Sure. But the PUC, in order to get your state permit, yes, you have to be no more than 45 decibels in non-participating homes.
Do we know when that ordinance was in place? That had to have been 2000, early 2000s?
Yeah.
And so I guess, our current ordinance says 60, which is, wouldn't fly with the PUC. To me, that, I'm sure when this was first done, 60 was a good number, but as we get more familiar with these projects, we realize that 60 was too high, and so now we're gonna lower it.
So it wasn't necessarily that it was too high, Commissioner, it's that, again, because it's the property line. So even if it was a cornfield or anything else, and very common in the past, here in South Dakota and other states, you'd have something like 60 to a property line or 50 to a home. And again, over the 20 years of research, what we've seen is, 50 to a house, participating or non-participating, is more than acceptable to ensure protection of public health and safety. What we've seen is South Dakota, North Dakota, some of the other states actually go to 45, just to say we're going to give another 5 decibels. Whereas if you're in Michigan, for example, their state standard is 55 decibels to a non-participating home. If you're in Illinois, it's about 47.
So what, I'm not your doctor, I'm just a simple country boy. So could you tell me the difference between like the level of 60 and then the level of 45?
Sure, so every 10 decibels, So it's hard, right, because we deal in, you know, how loud do I turn up my TV, or if I'm in the car, the stereo, the light. Every 10 decibel sound we change, so if I do 10 decibels, it's not a logarithmic scale, it's a doubling in sound. So if you go from 40 to 50, if I had something, you know, 40 versus 50, it's gonna sound like double the sound if I took the radio up 10 decibels. So if you go up 15 decibels, so like 45 to 60, it would be the equivalent of basically 3 times the amount of loudness that you're receiving. So it's actually quite a lot louder. So it's not just a, oh, well, we turned it up a little bit. So really, it's that going to 45, if you look at the studies that have done, similar studies, you know, that where you've got post-construction monitoring, something else that I believe is in the draft ordinance that I think we even recommended, certainly encouraged them to keep, is what we call that post-construction sound monitoring, where then the company, whatever company, if they would get a permit, they would build a project, they have to then go and prove it. They get professional engineers to come in with sound monitors, they put them out in the field to say, here's our model, now we proved that we were at that. If you look at those sound levels again of the 45, when you do sort of what we call an ambient baseline, everybody will tell you this is the quietest area ever on the planet, right? And everywhere I've ever been, it's the quietest. In this area of the world, and if I was to go into the rural area of Yankton, let's say in the north of the county, sound levels are going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40 to 42. Okay, just as like on the quieter nights and the like, and that's going to average out on that. And then if you look at Ohio, for example, they'll take that number and then they'll add 5 decibels to it. So you get a standard of around 45, 47, get up to 50. So really, by going to that 45, what it's trying to do is keep the noise. It's not even help definitely protect it, but it's trying to keep the intrusive noise from when you're out on your property, your gardening, your common enjoyment and use of your property.
I think you answered my question. When 20 years ago, 60 was acceptable, and now we're shooting for 45. And just my point there, how I interpret it, maybe it's different than you, is that as we learn things, you know, somebody said that 60 is a good number 20 years ago, and now as we learn more, now we're making it quieter. That's just my
yeah, and I think where we're at though now, Commissioner, if I was here 20 years ago, there were 15 papers published from around the world. Okay, and even at 60 again, because it was a property line, you probably were still, you know, if you look at, if you, not that we're bringing it, but if you were to look at a recent CUP that might have been filed, you're 60 at the, you're still applying with the 60 at the property line and 45 at the house. So it's not to say that you weren't going to still be at 45 at the house. The difference is that now where we are at today, there's over 150, now closer to over 200 peer-reviewed studies from around the world, independent research groups, not collaborating, all coming to the same conclusions. So this is not one, you know, if I was here 20 years ago, and I did start working in this 15, 17 years ago, we were a little bit more, you know, we had to base our knowledge on sound science from, you know, other sources and the like. Now we have that research in the database for wind turbines themselves.
Okay, any other questions?
Do you know what the World Health Organization recommends?
So the World Health Organization does not recommend anything for wind turbines.
Incorrect.
What's that?
Incorrect.
Well, so the World Health
Yeah,
Organization, if you're talking, so Commissioner, are you referring to the 2009 night noise guidance for Europe?
I have it up here.
Yeah, sure. Is it that?
It's a 45 dB. That's what they recommend for a house.
Sorry,
What
are
do
you
you recommend?
45 dB.
Okay, hold on. So you're on the 1999 document then, right?
It's 2019.
So the 2019 is the night noise document. It actually does say 45 decibels for homes at night. The difference is that's a night noise guidance that's averaged over a whole year. So it's unlike with wind turbines, where I would encourage you to have it, you can put a metric to it, whether you want to have it 10 minutes or 1 hour. PUC typically will require 45 over 10-minute LEQ. The WHO number is actually averaged over the entire year. So the quietest nights and the loudest. Now the other thing is with that guideline, if you read through it, it also recognizes that, you know, that is for even cities. Cities are 60, 70 decibels at nighttime. Like, it's a laudable goal. But yes, the 45, you're right, but it's even averaged over more. So it's more like a 50, but it's the same. It's similar to what the state is looking at. Yes.
So do you know what the U.S. Department of Transportation has for sound levels?
It depends on the density of the population and the like. Range from 45 to 65. And what the Department of Transportation does is that there's different guidelines for highways where you have to erect sound barriers. So when you're driving, you don't have a lot here in South Dakota, but when you're driving kind of, I don't know, pick your favorite populated city, somewhere else where you're driving through and you get those big walls and then there's houses behind them.
Minneapolis.
There you go. Minneapolis is a great example where you're driving down the highway in Minneapolis, you're going through a residential neighborhood, the DOT has guidance, and so does the state DOT as well. So again, all lining up with what we're talking about here, right? So if you were talking about DOT, there's air traffic noise. There are some airports where you do not operate airplanes between midnight and 6 a.m. Again, because unwanted noise at excessive levels can cause adverse health effects. No question about it. That's why we have limits. And the almost universal limit for wind turbine noise, whether you're here, whether you're in Europe, they vary depending on where you are. But across the U.S., like with everybody having looked at this the last 5 years, states are at 45 or higher, including here in South Dakota. And you also have a 20-year history here in South Dakota, right? You do not have, the Department of Health is not getting widespread complaints of people injured from the turbines. You have the lived experience here in South Dakota.
Any other questions? I would accept a motion for a 5-minute break.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner. Dan, second by Wanda. We'll take a 5-minute, 5 to 10 minute break. And a vote. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Our city got a proclamation where I'm graduating he's We don't see that so I go up and get a picture of him. And my good he's got a flip out screen. Only some chips on their cell phones. Short guy in a crowd. And to my right, I hear one of the city employees I get the short Look, hey,
You're recognizing
I was in St. County. Oh, wow. So if you retire early coverage? Yeah, I don't remember that. You have to have the actual there.
Where are you from? From Yankton? Oh, long trip to our I haven't seen I haven't seen that paper for a couple months. No word for anything.
Finding more they had.
Dan?
Very similar.
Yeah, go for it.
I hear you. I've vacation there.
She has to. If you charge a mauling fee,
My favorite weekday is the day after Labor Day. So we stay
Yeah.
Stephen. We went to bed. Kind of bustling. We got up in the morning, we had kids, so we were just kind of going around. We drove down Main Street. I was like, this is the serious I have ever felt. You know, just goes from years ago. Yeah, like always. I would have to get my car in the morning. We parked like underneath the and it was the only car. When I walked in, the lights all came on, and I was like, I've seen a lot of movies like this before. Yeah, but that's so beautiful. That was awesome.
I know all, in fact, the best part, so in Gary, have you ever met people, I don't know how names, like Rich Peters, Canadian, he's very driving to Gary, big upper state. They've got a I can get in, Trace, most since the Roman times, when wheels would go over the cobblestones that were stripped of wagons or cobblestones, and he said, there's no fucking way to get around. So as I go just really crazy here. It says this has been a problem since Roman times, and then the first noise restriction I'm aware of was Caesar's time when they stopped wagons from going down the road.
It's got 2 inches long. That's just from crossing the state line. That's right. See, look at you, Rose. I like inches though. It sounds like. So where you're located? Oh, okay. So you working? Yeah. Okay. So you're down trying to sort it. Yep. So like the new cuts and new roll. It is. Because we got some of the offers. Some of the offers.
See, I'm over there on purpose.
I always find it interesting. Which I think is great. I would agree. Yeah, it's a lot of even that's really good. So you're now I'm like working wherever they need me. And it's really like it's like start where you know. And go from scratch. And then you're going so the idea
Okay, I'd ask you all to take your seats, please.
Seems like the other day he was there ordering his beer. Make a motion, we go back into session.
Got a motion by Dan, seconded by Don to go back into regular session. Further discussion, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries. This will be the time for the commission to discuss and review the proposed ordinance, Article 26, for the wind energy system. Would anyone like to start?
Well,
Commissioners.
I guess, John, do we start with just going linearly through the ordinance, I think, from the top, and work our way through it?
Seems logical.
So, in that sense, I would think, let's just very quickly, does any of the commissioners have anything to add about the small energy systems, changes there?
I do not.
The only thing I would maybe like some clarification on is going through it, okay, you know, for example, like some of them require, well, it's conditional use permit everywhere but agricultural district, which they call it an administrative building permit. And that's not used anywhere else in our zoning ordinance. I believe they would have imagined that it's called a permitted use. So if we're gonna keep it, we need to be consistent throughout the zoning ordinance, call it a permitted use. But I wonder why we would allow a 135-foot tower without a conditional use permit. Right now, in our current zoning ordinance, it's a conditional use permit, correct, Gary? Because we just did one not that long for the buys up in Gale. I'm really kind of a fan of keeping it as a conditional use permit. Because if we just allow it up to 130-foot tall as a, in here it's called an administrative permit, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense.
Really quick, where are you seeing?
So I'm in section
What
2.
page?
There, 49. Yeah, so sections 2605, performance standards, and in A it talks, in A it goes, well, in the definition it says conditional use permit with the exception provided in agricultural district, and then you go to section I, and it says it qualifies for an administrative building permit, and that would be the only place in our whole zoning ordinance where we call something an administrative building permit. I believe what the intent there was to call it a permitted use, in which case we'd need to change Article 5 as well, and have that as a permitted use. But I guess I don't see I don't see what good output, a good result would be from taking it from a conditional use, what it is now, and doing it as something else. We all approved that conditional use permit, was that 6 months ago? And we went through it, the guy brought his design, we approved it, it was no big deal. This would take that out of the process, and I just don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, I could live with it just being a conditional use permit.
Okay,
Across
I'm
all.
fine. And we don't have to have a lot of the, if it's conditional use, then there's public hearings, and they gotta bring us the data.
I think there was some of it was, yeah, the idea that we didn't want to be inundated with lots of things, but these are not that common, so I think.
I've done, I think, 2 in
Yeah,
10 years, we've done, I think, 2.
yeah, so I think we can just move that to being a conditional use permit.
Okay.
So you're just talking about deleting I?
I would just,
Just this part, district qualifies as an administrative building permit.
yeah, the definition, section 205, I would
We
strike.
just want to strike that part.
Yeah, I would have it say, small wind energy conversion systems shall be considered a conditional use, period. And then the following provisions shall apply to all wind energy less than 50 kilowatts. So it's going to be a conditional use permit in all districts, and I think that makes sense, especially when these could be up to 135 feet tall.
Yeah, so there'd be a change under the performance, that first part, yeah, to eliminate that part, and then also under second I to qualifies for an administrative building permit.
And that is what we do now. It hasn't been a problem.
Yeah.
If it's not broke. That was really my small scale. I guess one other small one, sorry. It talks about going through the districts. We have,
What page?
well, we're on 49 again, design requirements. So it talks about R3 high density rural, doesn't give a lot size, moderate density, which is our R2, doesn't give a lot size, but then low density rural R1, it says it's a 5 acre lot, which is the minimum lot requirement anyway. We should either have lot size, so if I had a 10 acre moderate density lot, I could only do rooftop, but I guess I'm saying if we're gonna mention lot requirements, let's do it for all or not at all. So I would honestly, maybe we just strike the 5 acre lot size for low density. I don't know what that adds to that.
Yeah, you're probably right,
Yeah.
because low density is already limited to 5 acres.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
So it's excessive. Yeah.
so, I mean, technically, and there are lots that say you could have a moderate density lot of 20 acres and still not be allowed to have a tower, but if you're at 5 acres on another one, you can.
Well, I think, do we have, really quick question for Gary, do we have a lot of low density non-conforming lots that are not 5 acres?
Not a lot, no.
I think that was the only place.
And your idea from last time of having some sort of height, 1.5 height, I think that's where that would take care of all of that in the towers.
But yeah, well, in this here, we didn't, for all the other districts which have lots of lot restrictions on the sizes, or minimum, that have really small lots, we did just a straight height limit, but then down the agricultural district where you could have very large lots and much different uses. That's where we did those, sort of this, again, a multiplier of, larger lots, you can have a taller tower.
Yeah, it didn't make sense to me that that one had a lot requirement and none of the other ones did for some reason, so.
Just considering that we have some non-conforming low density out there that are less than 5 acres, I think we should just leave it in there, even though we know that we shouldn't have any new lots coming in like that. Because it essentially says that if you have a smaller than 5 acres, then, well, that's a problem too, I guess.
And it depends on the lot size. There are some that are 5 acres, but they're really skinny. And I don't know. We've seen too many of these 10 years down the road cause problems. So this is the time to fix it. Do you have any recommendations, Gary? You're our expert.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That we can probably just strike that meeting or exceeding the 5 acres and just leave any low density lot 40-foot minimum should be fine.
Okay. And I can go with that. You're the one that has to deal with this every day.
And I think we can probably, if we're doing that, we can also do that same action on F for the planned unit development.
Yes. The thing with the planned unit development though, and I get what you're saying, PUDs are 5 acres and then we zone them, and almost without exception, they're all broken up into individual lots. So am I right, Gary? So I do a minimum lot size 5 acres, we rezone it. They're almost always broken up into small parcels. They're never left at 5 acres.
Okay, well then, in that case, then we
Yeah,
leave.
yeah.
Okay, there we go. All right.
And then we're gonna strike I, the administrative building permit, and we're gonna call that, we're gonna call that a conditional use permit, and then I'm fine with leaving everything else in there. Is that good for everybody? All right.
Okay, Gary, did you get those changes?
Yep.
Does that make sense to you, Gary?
Yes.
Kind of keep, okay.
Moving on then to the large wind energy.
Yeah.
Page 51, everybody's good with the 2613 and 2615?
We're good with the couple changes we made last meeting with the substation and all that.
Yeah,
Okay.
the one of the changes that we put in last week was about the NPDES.
Yes.
So looking and reading more deeply into that, especially during the construction phase, that those permits could apply.
And I think that it was recommended that we leave that in.
So I think we're leaving that in, right? On design requirements, big B, little b.
I thought the citizen was gonna look into that a little more, and I heard
And I've gone on to the federal site and done quite a bit of reading on it over the past week. It does appear that, at least during the construction phase, those permits may apply. So leaving that clause in there just reinforces that they need to have that. If that does apply for them, they need to make sure they're complying.
And
You
then,
mean the one that was deleted?
Yeah, that,
You were in it?
yeah.
I guess
Unstraight.
I guess what my point is that the NPDES is really for people who discharge pollutants into the waters of the USA. I've only seen NPDES permits for, like Smithfield in Sioux Falls has one, all the small towns in the city of Yankton have one where they discharge into the waters. I guess I don't know if this is,
It may not apply if they're not discharging into U.S. waters, if it's not, but it could apply. And so I think we leave that in there. So it's not like they have to get it NPDES.
Gary, are you aware of
They would
us
have to.
requiring that for anybody else?
I have not heard that for this specific thing, but I can certainly give them a call.
I guess in my thought process, as I understand, the state requirement where the stormwater runoff permit from DE and FNR, here, is that if you disturb more than, is it a half acre or full acre? That makes sense.
It's an acre, but it's an acre cumulative.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's an acre, for in the case of Swan Lake here, 37 sites, an acre, that all 37 sites are cumulative. So, and that's what I'm saying, like, because of the wider area, this could apply, and it could very easily apply to something like a wind farm, a large wind farm.
Well, I just pulled it up here. NPDES report, permit by the Clean Water Act controls water pollution by regulating point source pollution. So that, literally what that means is coming out of a pipe.
It's not always. It doesn't, no. If you read the whole thing, it's not, no. That's a very simple explanation of it, but it does not always mean that. Because it's also drainage ditches, that is what is actually in their regulations. So if you go deeper and read more deeper, you'll find those things. So drainage ditches and runoffs from construction sites can also apply. So I just feel like we should just leave that in there.
Can we do more research on that?
I could certainly give them a call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you talk to the state and ask, Jason Rogo, what he thinks, or somebody at DA and YRC? Because we have to work with them to do that anyway, right? Because from what I understand, EPA has delegated the NPDES permitting to the states.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
State South Dakota handles all that.
I'll let you know.
Okay, moving right along then. Page 53.
I was reading, talks about the preferred method of lighting is by means of an aircraft detection lighting system. Which, would we just, at the top of the page, on page 53, would we just, I thought they said that that's what you guys do anyway, right? Aircraft. So why wouldn't we just require that? I think that's better than having the lights just flash all the time when they're not needed. From what I understand, when an aircraft comes close enough, then they would come on, and then they're not bothering the citizens. And
so you're suggesting removing the preferred manner part of that and just requiring it?
That would make sense to me.
Yeah.
But, they're
I think that makes a lot of sense too.
I think it's better.
Commissioner, it's a state law.
What's that?
It's a codified state law that requires ELS.
Yeah, and I think that's becoming a lot more common.
So we're
Yeah,
taking out
it's law right
preferred,
now.
in my
You
UP,
have no choice.
getting more federal too, so.
So we're taking out preferred and calling it the manner of lighting shall be.
shall be.
Yes, and I think they're gonna do it, and it's better for our citizens, and it's a win.
Do we want to list that codified law in that?
I wouldn't, because it maybe
That's a good
changes.
change.
Yeah.
All right, all right.
So are we good on noise? Page 54?
I'm sorry, 53. The 53
still 53.
question, I know it talks about overhead electric lines. Is there any possibility of burying some of those?
I think a comment was made that all the lines will be underground, right?
So, Mr. Chair, all collection lines, so the lines that go from the turbines to the substation, at any given project are typically buried. The overhead lines, there can be a portion of a transmission line for a project. Some projects, there will be no overhead transmission line from the substation to the actual, let's say that 230 kV line that runs through the county. Some will have no overhead. Some projects that have a 20, 30 mile overhead transmission line, 150, 230 kV. That is prohibitively expensive to bury those lines. So you would typically, and again, for a renewable project, whether it's solar or wind or anything else, they have to be on participating in that. There's no eminent domain or anything else that can be active there. But so overhead lines would be transmission lines, collector lines are typically buried.
So really quick, the point of interest, what's the voltages of your collector lines that are buried?
They're usually the 37 and a half to 34 and a half.
Okay.
34 and a half.
34.5.
So, yeah, and that's again, universal across any wind or so.
Are we what is a feeder line then? Is that your?
So you guys have the definition of feeder line in here. I would typically call that a transmission line. I think that's what it's meant to be when you've got overhead electric lines. I think what you're meaning by that is a transmission line.
And I guess if possible, I'd like to see those buried, but the zoning ordinance we have here specifically requires them to be placed overhead. And I guess I don't know why we would require that. So it would be better, in my opinion, to have them buried.
The cost, Commissioner, that you, so.
You guys can afford it.
Well, nobody can. I mean, there's literally, the reason why you have your 230 kV line running overhead across the county and around, everywhere around North America is because it's millions of dollars a mile to bury a transmission line. It's very different than a collector line.
But there may be instances where it would be appropriate, in tourist areas or areas like that too. So it can be buried, it's costly.
I mean, technically it's feasible, it's just cost prohibitive.
So what are you suggesting for?
Well, this talks about shall.
You talking about I or H?
I. Well, I guess both of them. I would personally like as many of them buried as possible, and I understand there are instances where that might not work. But I guess I'm open to the opinion of the board. Well, this, H talks about underground cables.
So
maybe even a line like
It doesn't have a depth though.
H is talking about the collectors,
Yeah.
and I is more talking about the transmission lines.
And maybe we could put in something, or I and H is the board of adjustment may require these to be buried. Or something.
Do we want to change I to
I thought
transmission
the
lines
comment
instead
was
of
4
feeder
feet.
lines? Just as a heading?
Not?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yes, you could change, so you could change H to collector lines, and you could change I to transmission line. Those would be sort of more appropriate definitions for those.
How about depth?
And the depth is typically, so what you have here is pretty standard to negotiate with the effective landowner.
So I wanted to put, that's okay.
They typically get buried 3 to 4 feet. So you got a trencher that comes in, and they're buried to that depth. So we got, because again, you could be disking right over top, you don't want to cut them or anything else. It's typically done to 3 and 4 feet, but again, I think that's kind of, there's code and practice.
Yeah, I don't think the code would let you go any shallower than 2 feet.
I
Well,
imagine.
why would we just pick an arbitrary number?
I mean, I think in this case where you have commission
40 inches.
definitions there, though, I think is probably appropriate, right? And then what you could do in during a CUP application, you could then say, if somebody came in and said they're going to vary up 1 foot or whatever, you could then look at it in that case. Again, because it's on participating land, like often, you know, and again, if it says, you know, along adjacent to roads, that they typically are, right? They'll follow that, but then you'll have some that might be in the county right away, road right away, and that would then be up to discussion with the county and county staff. So I think we've got there. I mean, under the transmission line side, so I don't know that you need that, we could say maybe a minimum of 2 feet or something. I don't think we want to have that, because there's code to that and everything else. We can do that with CP. On the transmission line side, Commissioner, to your point, that you would like to see some of the very round special features of that. Maybe instead of saying shall place overhead, you could say maybe place overhead, and then allow consideration on a project by project basis. If there's certain sections, so let's say the county feels that you would want to see that done, then you could do it on a case by case. Somehow getting some language in here that allows for, the typical would be overhead, however, in special circumstances, parks, whatever have you.
Yeah, I think reading this, I think maybe changing shall to may, simply because, yeah, we're talking about the overhead lines, and that is exactly what this is getting at, is any of the overhead transmission lines placing into public right of ways.
Are we calling feeder lines is no longer, we're going to call it overhead transmission
You could
lines?
leave them as feeder lines too, just simply because it could be a collector or a transmission line. And then I was looking at H again here, reading through that, and it also talks about not just the collectors, but any type of communication cabling.
Yeah, and there is a communication cable that goes in the same,
Yes.
in the same hole, or in the same.
I guess
So I feel like leaving H as electrical cables and leaving H alone, I think is the right way to go.
I would like to have some sort of minimum depth placed in there, because we've talked about 4 feet, we've talked about 2 feet, we've talked about 3 feet. And I know in 2019, for example, there was a lot of even DY water lines that got washed out. And the problem I potentially see, there's a lot of, farm equipment that could potentially go deeper than 2 feet, even with erosion. So maybe we have it in here that they will be placed at a minimum of 4 feet. So then we have consistency.
I think national electrical code is probably going to govern a lot of it.
Then a minimum of 4 feet, and if it's deeper, then with the code.
So Commissioner, typically the minimum depth would be 3 feet. So it is 3 feet is kind of minimum depth. Sometimes we go to 4, but I would suggest if you're going to put a minimum depth there, I would say 3 feet. Again, remembering that this is on private land, working with the landowners, they know where those lines are. And so if you were going to do something other than just disking or tilling or whatever have you, then the landowner's going to know where those lines
Until the property gets sold.
Until it gets sold and Brian inherits.
If it gets sold, it goes with title and all of that. And then usually if a property does get sold, honestly, in any property sale, then.
But it's not going to say 3 feet. The property, it's just going to say there's a transmission line.
They'll have an as-built drawing that they'll go with the property for all the lines that are. So I would suggest, if you're going to do a minimum depth, I would suggest 3 feet.
And I don't know, I would probably prefer to just defer to the National Electrical Code.
Yeah, but when we're here and we get a permit for these, then what's the National Electrical Code? I don't.
Look it up.
But
It's a code and
what is
it's updated and current.
Yeah, what is it?
It's a very large, but
That's my point, is why wouldn't we just have a minimum of 4
because
feet?
what if it changes in the future? What if the
Then-
recommended changes in the future?
Then it's
Okay.
4 feet
If
and
we
not
reference
less
the
than,
National
because these are
Electrical Code,
minimum
then cover it.
requirements. These
Why
could
not
really
3
save
feet or the
something.
National Electrical Code, whichever is greater?
I'm 3 feet is better than 2, but I would like to see 4 as a minimum. I don't
Again-
so much equipment can get deep, people are buying and taking out fences all the time.
So-
Chilling, especially with erosion.
So I like one as a suggestion, 3 feet or whichever is greater.
I can go with that.
Gary, you got that?
Minimum 3 feet or code.
Or the National Electrical Code depth.
Whichever is greater.
Yep.
I can go with that. And then I, are we gonna do change the shall to may?
To May.
And then, maybe something in there that Board of Adjustment may require in certain circumstances for the lines to be buried. Everybody be okay with that?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going through a park
Under
or
certain
something.
circumstances, it could possibly require some places to be buried, yeah.
Would that make it
You all over that, Peter?
difficult for the developer?
I'm sorry?
Would he determine his cost beforehand, and would he know what the depth is gonna be? Whether it's done 3 feet or 4 feet?
Are we talking about high for the feeder lines?
I would just think that the developer would look into that and find out which is greater. I mean, the developer's gonna know what he's doing.
And they'll have to write it into the CUP application as to what they did.
I could just foresee an example where it would be appropriate to have it underground as opposed to, not the whole thing.
You're talking in high, right?
I'm talking- Are we still on that? or-
Yes, I think that's where we're not. And I agree with you, I think we could maybe add a piece of language that kind of opens up, like, we can require if there's necessary, if there's a sticky spot someplace in the development.
And, you know, we certainly Board of Adjustment have to rationalize the
Yeah.
adjustment for it.
So may place overhead electric lines per Board of Adjustments.
I'd say how about the permittee may place overhead electric lines. You know, as feeders on public right of ways exist, and then after that, I'd say the Board of Adjustment may require portions of these lines to be buried at their discretion. That's something that, and then everything else I'm fine with.
Okay. Moving right along. We're done with page 53. Page 54, getting into the nuts and bolts.
Okay. It's a noise. I've done quite a bit of research into this as well. Down in the lake area, on a weeknight, I'm usually around 25 to 26 dB. I have a campground that can be noisy into about 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. And sitting next to them, right on our fence line, will be around 40 dB. This last weekend, we had quite a bit of activity with vertigo days. Stringers playing a band and stuff, that was 45 dB from the deck. And it's fairly noisy. And we had helicopters flying overhead during the day. Those were 55 dB, depending on how close they were, but usually 50 to 55 dB.
Just so I can kind of draw a comparison, what would a combine be going back and forth, harvesting corn?
Well, I haven't done that measurement
One time.
yet. We haven't had any combines yet, right?
No, you've
got
land right next to you that's got corn.
I know, and I will find that out, I can find that out.
Combine, typical combine,
But-
if you're standing 50 feet,
Hold on.
typical combine, you're about 80 to 100.
Point of order, just public comments over, so.
Well, see, what I don't want to get in is something, we set a standard and then all of a sudden you can't go out and combine in the evening or in the morning, you have to do it between
But
9.
do we have, to that point, do we have combines running 365 days a year?
I have combines running.
No, does anyone have combines running 365 days a year? No, okay, so, but let me go on with this. Highway 52 from the bike trail, 50 dB on average when you got traffic.
Exclusive of motorcycles.
Do not have any trucks or motorcycles, no. Also, looking at federal transportation numbers, they say that a rural countryside is 25 dB is the evening noise. A suburban neighborhood is 35 dB. An urban neighborhood is 45 dB. And so I'm looking at all these different numbers and I'm like, where is that right now? The German study that these guys quoted, I read papers and a few other papers around it. They really came back as yes, they don't have a lot of information on any ill effects past 45 dB, and that's a lot where it'll be a joke. But they also note that most people are comfortable with 35, no greater than a 35 dB evening noise time. Or dBA is what they're measuring. Now, we can get into the various weightings later too. But I am feeling pretty strong that at 35 dB, you're saying that background noise when you're in these areas is only going to be perceived twice as loud as what it is today.
So my question is why does the South Dakota State PUC, why do they come up with the number of 45?
Because that's what the WHO says. And so they just kind of take, again, as they say, look up to the next organization above you for guidance, as they keep saying. So someone makes a decision up here, far away from the people, and it just travels down because we don't take a critical look at it. So that's what I tried to do this week. I did a lot of different places running around, measuring the noise and looking at what the noise was, just to get an idea of what the difference between 25, 35, 45, 55.
What is the dBA when the wind is blowing 15 miles an hour? Just anywhere in the country.
Just
in town.
random blow.
Random blowing 15 miles an hour, what's the dBA?
I didn't have that.
Because I'll tell you what, the wind blows 15 miles an hour more days than not in the state of South Dakota.
No, I did have one that was 25 miles an hour.
What was that?
That one registered it in at 42 dBA.
Did you, in your opportunities to measure noise, did you go over to the turbines over by Avon?
I didn't, but actually I will get that opportunity Thursday as I travel to Minneapolis and come back.
Because I went to Lake Andes last Wednesday, and on my way back, I made a field trip and went driving down some roads and standing in some fields and listening to see if my internal clock would be.
And I did that too before, and as well.
If I could become depressed.
I could hear the noise, but it's really hard to quantify my opinion.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to quantify, I'm trying to get my sense, because what I might tolerate for noise might be different from someone
else. Mr. Chair, I guess one of the questions that we put a noise restriction in there, and how is that going to be followed?
How is that what?
How is it going to be followed if somebody has a complaint? I just got to ask this question. Well, what if it's, we set this at whatever?
Well, I think we need
somebody says
we need to parameterize it.
Pretty much the same way when we did medical marijuana manufacturing places, and Commissioner Kennery wanted to know who was going to police the what.
Well, that is with state law, but that's this one too. So we get a complaint and somebody says
Gary's our guy.
But I mean, are we equipped to enforce that?
No, we're not.
Probably have to buy some good equipment to start with, but that was one of the reasons they put in G on 56 about the noise study post-construction, that it requires them to provide a post-construction certification that the project complies with applicable codes, industry standards, and ordinance requirements. A licensed certified noise consultant shall conduct the study.
You know, certainly, we're at 60 now, it's way too high, and we need to be lower, which I understand.
Well, I think 60 is too high, but I think 30 is probably too low. If 25 mile per hour wind is 42.
And the 35 is above ambient, so you're not going to be going out there measuring.
And nothing.
It's half and nothing, and you're also, yes. After all my thoughts and everything, and you know, we limit other businesses because of noise. Don't let certain places have concerts past certain hours of night. I feel really good with just doing a 35 dB. That's not out of line. Other counties in the United States, according to the Department of Energy, have set a 35 dB level.
Well, move it on. Do you want to take a vote, Mr. Chairman?
I think we just need to move forward. Obviously, we haven't come to a conclusion on a few of the other items this evening.
Not yet.
My thought is, moving on. What I would like to do is get a PUC to come in here, one of their, either a PUC commissioner or one of their aides, and come in here and explain to us why this state of South Dakota has allowed wind energy systems to come into South Dakota with the regulations that they have put into place. And because obviously we're not going to come to an agreement this evening without further understanding on some of these situations. We've got people already that have said pros and cons that have contradicted each other. So I think we need to have more input by our governing body, which is a PUC, and the state of South Dakota.
I disagree with that.
We can't continue to kick this down the road.
Yeah.
I understand, and I'm not kicking this down the road, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say, I do not feel comfortable making these decisions tonight without hearing from the Public Utilities Commission of the state of South Dakota.
Because your brother's got half the ground that's involved.
Yeah, you shouldn't even be voting.
I'm going to tell you this right now. This has to do with an ordinance for the future of Yankton County. This has absolutely nothing to do with NextEra.
Yes, it does.
Point of order.
And the future of Yankton County.
Well, this is
Point of order. Please say that the public comment is over.
Public comment is over.
Okay.
Governor, no money.
So, we had a task force that spent months going over information. We've had presentations from energy companies, we had presentations from lots of people.
We didn't go to the PUC though.
No, but we did have our utilities companies present PUC.
One of the companies was Bonhome Electric.
Yeah.
That was the only electrical company that came in and said anything about whatever they recommended.
And there's a lot of information online if you go onto the PUC site.
Do we want to just table the noise
to do our
and move
research,
on?
John.
Mr. Chair, to me, I think that the noise and the setbacks are interconnected, and The
There's a
reason
big
you
issue.
have setbacks is because it mitigates negative effects, whether it's noise or flicker lights or all that. So for me to set noise, we probably want to, the biggest thing we're going to deal with tonight is setbacks. So we're going to have to vote and, majority rules. And once we do that, maybe then we can set the noise, because if the setbacks are large, right, that's going to affect the decibels. And if they're closer, well, maybe then we need to look at different noise. But I don't know, that's just my suggestion, but we have to make a decision, and the public as well, if you dislike this ordinance, you guys can have a petition and have it referred to a vote. But where I'm at is we have an old ordinance that's 60 decibels and doesn't have a lot of the protections in, and we need to add some protections for the citizens. So let's do setbacks, and I think we got to the point where we do something and we make a motion.
Isn't Nextera under the old ordinance anyway?
They are, but what I'm.
So this is going forward, this is not them
That's
anyway.
what I'm trying to say.
Well,
This is-
I just want to make sure everybody understands.
This has nothing to do with what NextEra is permit or application is with.
Because theirs is already in. So we're going forward from there. So let's assume for purposes of hypothetical that Nextera builds their wind farm. The next people that come in have to live with what we do now.
Correct.
Which does not help any of these people that it spoke against.
So
Are we gonna move on to setbacks?
I do have a little bit more to talk about, so I take about.
About noise or setbacks?
About noise.
Okay.
The other point is the weighting. And I believe one of the comments, public comments tonight already brought that out. The differences of A rating versus, well, there's A, B, C, D ratings. A rating versus a C rating versus a Z rating. A ratings are tuned for the human hearing. They're most common for acoustical devices, cell phones, and things, speakers. A C rating is more common in industrial areas. It is a flat response weighting from, I think it's roughly 30 hertz. So it's essentially flat to zero. Drops off from there. I think the 3D one was 31 hertz. But it does cover the low frequency noises that you find from these wind towers much better. It is also used more often for industrial environments.
A C rating versus
A C rating versus an A rating. There's also a Z rating, which is completely flat across the board. It essentially just a dB period. It goes from 0 to 1. The only downside to a Z rating is that's a hard measurement to make on a Z rating. You almost always have a filter involved here, so you can find you can get very easily A or C rated sound meters. Other ratings are a little more difficult, possibly more expensive and more heavy. So I do think we could do a DVC rating.
Well, and with the way it talks of here, the measure at the closest point on the non-participating property line, it's not a house, it's a property line. So that's how that is currently written.
That is true.
And I guess I sympathize, I really do. But I'd rather protect, somebody's residence than, property line if they have to give a little bit. I understand why that was written, but that, what was the reason from doing it?
The L, so on the clause L there, it has the participating
on the closest non-participating
45 dB from the non-participating property line. 35 from the participating non-participating residents.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense then.
Okay, so it is a difference, so in my, and I think we stay with those ratings of 45 DVC to the property line and 35 DVC out of the residence.
Yeah, I understand the residents, what is the reasoning for the property?
Well,
because I mean, if you have to choose one, I would choose a from the residents.
if I had to choose one too, I would agree. If I had to just pick one, I would say 35 DVC.
And the reason I say that is to move the ordinance forward, we're gonna need to get 3 votes. And I would much rather, protect somebody's residence than a property.
Yes.
Coming to that. And so if there's a spot that we have to compromise, I'd say it's at non-participating residents.
So you'd be okay with 35 DVC non-participating residents only?
Well, I'd be okay with 42, because that's what the wind blows. That's a very.
That's an addition.
I know, but I think you said at 25 miles per hour, that's what it is. And when does it not blow like that?
And when it's 10, it's down, and so it's I guess it's a 4-point measure because it's a.
I would agree.
And I'm going off of the backgrounds that are stated out there from federal agencies.
Correct.
And from World Health Organization and various other studies for an ambient background level.
Mr. Chair.
That's what I'm using.
Don.
I use that 42 days just to give you an idea of what 42 is.
I got to Don, yes.
I suggest that we do what Dan said. We table the DB noise level until we set our setbacks. Because if you put the setbacks in that are in here, you don't have to worry about DB. Because they're going to be.
Okay, well then we should probably, if you want to do that, we want to move on to setbacks and we'll come back to the noise.
Yes.
In my opinion, I feel the noise is a more important protection than the setbacks.
I don't know what the other 4 said.
Yeah. So, okay.
I heard you very well.
I have a question. Lakes, rivers, and streams. What precipitated that?
I think that's just the common language in a lot of the zoning ordinance is commonly setbacks from lakes, rivers, streams.
This is the chart for people, you pretty much copied it.
Okay.
And I think that the rationale behind the CAFOs is.
So are we gonna use the CAFO setbacks then?
We don't have to.
I think that's a poor idea.
Okay.
Because a CAFO and a wind farm are 2 vastly different things. It's like growing oranges and apples in a basket.
It's still
exactly
fruit.
the same. Yeah, they're not. They're very different. And I feel like they have their own. We should work at regulating problems and mitigating problems, and not just mitigating a policy. This is why in the task force I was very much against banning wind farms because it's not a good idea.
Okay.
So I think we need to focus on regulating the problems and mitigating the problems, and not start thinking about, well, if it's good for CAFOs, then it should be good over here, because the problems are completely different.
So, setbacks, residents, active church, business, schools, and game production areas. We tentatively agreed to go 1.5 times total height for participating, and we still have the 2-mile setback for non-participating. We have municipalities that still have 2 miles, lakes, rivers, and streams, 1 mile, right-of-way line, 1.5 times total height, property line participating 1.5 times total height, non-participating 2 miles, pipelines and utilities infrastructure is 1.5 times total height.
gonna start with a really low hanging one, I think. The lakes, rivers, and streams. I think we can cross streams off. That will be very hard
I agree.
to legislate on. But definitely keep it lakes and rivers. I know they said, oh, well, we only have the Missouri River here. No, we don't. We have the
There's a
James
Jim
River.
River.
We have the James River, which is very beautiful. We have Marigal Lake. We have a couple other lakes where people have cabins out and stuff like that. So we have more than just the Missouri River.
Well, I agree, but I would like to cross the streams out.
Yeah, I think so, because that's going to be very hard to regulate, to
Look at.
A ditch with water in it is a
I think
stream.
it's I don't think it gives us much value.
Are you still good with 1 mile, or you want to reduce that to half? Or-
Let's leave it at 1 mile right now until we get through the other ones, I think.
Okay. You in agreement with crossing off streams?
Yeah.
Do that, Gary?
Yeah. I guess, what is the reason that a mile from, like,
A mile from
like,
what?
what are we mitigating by not putting it,
That's,
to a lake?
again, that's a very common restriction
But,
from the Department of Energy.
Why?
People with cabins.
Well,
Most
but, I
often
mean,
they're
somebody
recreational areas.
who has a cabin should get a bigger setback than somebody without. I can understand the reason we have it in the lakes and rivers, again, where this chart came from, because of non-point source pollution. But again, I guess I don't.
I think the lakes should stay for sure, just because of Swan Lake, you want to stay a mile away from the Swan Lake recreational area. Lucid Park recreational area, Marigal Lake recreational area. Rivers, like you say, you got the Jim River, there's campsites along the Jim River also. So I'm just questioning, and it's not a big deal, half a mile versus 1 mile.
It's on the 1.5 times the height for participating. And we see that number come up a lot. That is again, that is one of the most common setbacks from the Department of Energy on all counties in the United States is 1.5. You see a lot of 1.1 and 1.5.
The other, the first box with the residences.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the participating residences,
Top
even
box.
right away and property lines. On the participating side, and that's what, from the task force, that's where that number did come from. You can blame me, because I pulled up all that information from the Department of Energy.
So, here's the question. Where do you determine on the property line you're going to measure?
The nearest property line.
The nearest.
Yeah, so it'd be the shortest distance. to the
Shortest
property.
distance, any half mile either way.
I'm not talking about the participating, but 1.5 times the height. So that would be, with our height restriction, 600 feet, that'd be 900 feet from the property line. So, and I think that's a good one. It gives you built in a little bit more safety distance for, in the bad, we hope it never happens, but one of these things collapse or make a damage, that you just have that much more room for the debris or processing to someone else's property. I think it's really important for the right-of-ways. You definitely don't want some to start hitting our county roads. And then pipelines and utility infrastructure. That one was it's kind of weird, like the utility infrastructure, because some of the stuff connects to utility infrastructure in terms of transmission lines. So I feel like that one there, we should probably put in an exception of transmission lines, simply because transmission lines have to come on these things.
Otherwise, how
But
would
otherwise,
that work?
yeah. But otherwise, I do think pipelines there too. So.
So you want to add an exception to,
For
With the exception of
transmission
feeder
lines, feeder lines that are for the project or for the farm. But otherwise, I guess I propose that, does anyone have a problem with the participating setbacks?
With the what?
Participating setbacks.
What if somebody owns 2 quarters and it's, would we regulate how far it would be to their own property? You got, you got 2 quarters of corn, and the site would be closer to Eatonville section to a property line like that?
Well, I defer that back to like all of our zoning issues. We've seen them all the time where you have 2 lots, someone owns both lots and they want to build something closer. Well, you have to join the lots then. Because one of the lots could be sold in the future. Now you have a non-conformance. So.
You haven't, what would your recommend? I mean, you run into that all the time, don't you, Gary? Where people.
It does happen periodically, that's for sure, but like you said, they can always join them together if they choose, so I'm fine with leaving it as is.
So we left the elephant in the room without talking about it yet, and that's the property line non-participating ones.
Oh, I guess the one thing I did think was like, and I think this is something that actually Sarah suggested, was about putting in on the participating 1.5 times the height or a set distance, and I think just for like residence business on that very first one. I think they suggested 1,000 feet.
Who's saying it?
Next Sarah.
Okay, your existing ordinance.
Yes, and it is putting in on there, not just 1.5 times total height, but or 1,000 feet, whichever is greater. Just so that it can't be less than 1,000 feet for a tower from a residence.
Probably.
For participating.
So are we making that addition?
I think so.
Are we gonna have any requirements, say, if this gets built and then later on somebody wants to build a shed, we couldn't then issue them a building permit? Because it says, residence and all this stuff, but it doesn't say any shop or anything like that. Are we gonna have some type of rule where we won't issue a building permit if it's, because I guess I see that happen.
Well,
do you have anything you recommend on that, Gary? I mean, would it be 1.5 times the tower height, nothing can be built in there? Or would it be just no residence?
I think it's more no residence.
I agree, I think it's more just the residents. I mean, if they choose to build closer to there, as long as it meets our regular setbacks, and they choose to build next to the tower, I think that's more their choice.
I'm not worried about a machine shed or a grain bin so much.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason is, a blade comes off.
Yeah. But there you're just worried about property damage. These other things, there's human life. So.
In your shop a lot too.
Well, as Don mentioned, the elephant in the room, time for it.
Non-participating. So, when I thought about this, and I think I mentioned this the last meeting, we have raw distance setbacks, and I kind of like the idea of a height setback, simply because the taller these towers are, that's
The greater the distance.
the greater the distance, but, if we set, let's say we set them all saying they have to be back so far, well, then they're gonna get them back that far and they're gonna put them as high as they can. Or, there's no encouragement to look at.
So 1.5 times
The really problem is that the size of these things are so petty and producing so much noise and all these other things and everything that everyone says, but, what's the, would they have the same problem if these things were 200 feet tall? And maybe in the future, that's what happens, I'd like to leave it open. our ordinance is open to encourage better technology that works with the environment. Well, okay, let's start with that. If we converted what the planning commission proposed from their distances now to a height multipliers, residents would be 17.6 times the tower height. And this probably 17.6 times the tower height. Property line 17.6 times the tower height. Just to give you a picture.
Show me out of the map, you sent me out of the map.
Oh, 2 miles, 10,560 feet divided by 6.
Rounded up to 20.
Well, and again, I go back to the fact, I believe it is a fact, that 2 miles would eliminate future wind runs.
We would eliminate a wind, well, we put a lot of work on it because this is from a non-participating. Now, if you look at our definition, they would have to convert all the properties around from a non-participating to a participating. So that means they'd have to get agreements with every, within 2 miles above the tower.
All right, yeah, they can do the work.
It does put a lot of legwork on it.
Eliminating.
But it's on them.
So again, what is the PUC recommendation for distance from a non-participating?
Do not think for yourself.
Public
What's the
comment is
answer?
closed and we can empty the room if we need to. Okay?
The one problem with PUC is PUC isn't here. They don't live here. They don't live in our county. And I think we were elected to represent the people in this county. So.
For those of you that are clapping, I'm sure that many of you never voted for me. I know that there's 1,000 or 2,000 Yankton residents, because there wasn't many people voted at the last election. But there's a couple thousand that did. You're not the only people in the county.
Where are they?
They're not here.
Yeah,
Same way the people that voted for you.
Well,
most people don't care enough to be here. Listen to the people in their own. You're supposed to represent us.
You talk about the city residents, the Yankton, they don't live out there with
Public
us.
comment is closed.
You let next era talk all the time.
Public comment is closed.
Then why is he talking to the public?
Is there support for 2 miles?
I apologize for that. I shouldn't have said anything to you.
Well, in the task force, there was a lot of support for even more than 2 miles.
But I mean, amongst, you know.
And this is the hard thing, is like, again, I think we want to focus on mitigating the problems. And one of the things I think about when we talk about a large setback, some of the people who are against the wind farm coming in, some of it is aesthetics. They want to see them into their scape, and it does impose on the natural beauty. Again, it's a subjective term of the county. But unfortunately, the size of these things, 2 miles, 5 miles, it doesn't even make a difference.
I can see
So-
the wind towers in Nebraska from my home and your and it's 30 miles away.
The lights.
The lights. But what I guess the point I'm getting to is where are we at? I think we gotta bite the bullet and we gotta vote as much as
And so I think that-
as much as I'd like to have bigger setbacks, we're at a quarter mile. And if we can't agree to 3 people, the old ordinance stays in. So I'm at the point of, I would like to see bigger setbacks than what we currently have.
I do too.
So Is there, but we gotta get 3 votes to do it. 2
Okay,
votes,
so-
and we're still at a quarter mile. So, is there any compromise? I know, 2 miles, is that gonna work for anybody? No? All up to you, Wanda. I'm saying, no pressure.
Well, here's the problem that most of the people that spoke against this ordinance, as I see it, is that no matter what we do here today, next terrace building may be building their wind farm, whatever. I can't change that. The only thing I can change is potentially one somewhere else in the county. And unfortunately, since we don't know where that hypothetical wind farm is going to be, those people aren't here to express their opinion.
Yes, we are.
So, there's got to be some compromise somewhere.
Mile and a half?
So I put together something like we could maybe compromise. Let's say, okay, as it is, I'm gonna say our starting point is where the planning and zoning left, made left us. And I'm trying to do them all with height multipliers. 17.6 is their general height multiplier. So just for a simpler number, 15. That drops down a little bit.
Mathematically, what is that, right?
9,000 feet. Maximum,
Was that 1.8 miles?
about 1.8 miles.
I kind of like the idea of, sticking to a number. So
What's
that people
interesting
can know
is- What's
like a
interesting
solid
is, I was gonna say, what's interesting is that a lot of recommendations and a lot of places require 2 miles from a municipality.
Well, that's what this has, 2 miles from the municipality. If it's going to be closer to non-participating homes, residences, churches, it should be that same number from municipalities, because we should all share.
Now, John, you were thinking, you wanted to go stick with a quarter mile,
1,500 feet,
1,500 feet?
3 times the total height.
Three times the total height would be 1,800 feet.
1,800 feet.
And I can maybe compromise a little bit on property line versus residence, just in the same way as we were talking about noise.
I think it should be a little further away from the residents than
Yeah,
my property
exactly.
line, because obviously people aren't
If you have the same. for both-
normally living right on the
Yeah,
line.
if you have the same for both, you might as well just get rid of residence.
Say what?
If you have the same for both, you just might as well just get rid of residence criteria. But
I don't know, there might be some non-participating churches.
Well, and, one thing that says right in the requirements too is that any person who lives in this distance can waive the setback. And, we've had that done before, and the comparative thing we had was with Gables. I know when we had the dairy come in up by Tabor, the neighbors came in and said, hey, this is a great family, and, we're happy they're doing it, we waive our setback. And I think that's telling on good projects where people who are affected are willing to, waive their setback to move the project forward. And so there are options, and
Yeah.
we have to be a little more legwork done. But,
yeah, they can waive setbacks or they can become a participating property.
So-
Those are ways to eliminate these large setbacks.
Doesn't sound
But
like too much.
you also have to look at, if you have a greater setback, that's that many more non-participating properties that you have to go to and
Yeah,
get
it's a lot
them.
more legwork, yeah.
It's more than likely.
Yeah.
It's not just.
No,
like-
I know, and a lot higher risk of not being able to get that last, you know, you complete that map. So, yeah, I agree with you, it's a 2 mile setback is a very big requirement for any prospective wind farm.
So it doesn't sound like we're.
And again, we're talking about future ordinance, we're not.
Yeah. I guess we just start throwing out number, in 2 miles. Anybody there?
Well, being from the task force and everything, and, you know, hearing from anything, I can vote for 2 miles, but if you're on 2 miles, I can vote for 2 miles, but it's like I said, we need 3. So that comes back to that.
I'll make that motion, see where it goes.
I'll second it, but we should put it to vote.
Got a motion by
For which one though?
Dan, second by Ryan.
Non-participating?
Non-participating, yeah.
Property line?
Non-participating residents.
And
Motion by
property
Dan.
lines or
No,
just?
just this one.
Oh, just this?
Just the residents, non-participating
You
residents.
see where we're at?
Residents, is it the whole line, the residents, churches, and,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Motion by Dan, second by Ryan. 2 mile setback for residents, non-participating residents, active churches, business, schools, game production areas. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Patty.
Dan?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Wanda?
No.
John?
No.
John?
No.
Compromise.
The motion fails.
I think we need to compromise.
Okay, motion for 1 mile for resident, active church, business, school, not as much as I want, but again, if this doesn't pass, you're stuck with the 1/4 mile.
Dan, can we change that motion? Can we do a 10 times height, which is roughly a mile?
I personally don't like that.
Oh.
I know you engineers like that, but I think people want to see.
Well, what happens if it's like 1,000 foot tall?
Well, there's 10,000 feet.
I get it. I get it.
That is going to be this
Right now,
one.
Yeah, today.
Yeah.
Today, but that's what the ordinance said, we have to change it down the road.
Not with that theory. With
Okay,
that
so
theory, it just gets to
you want to stick with
random.
a mile?
I'm going to see where it goes, mile
Okay.
to resident, this is non-participating residents, and again, not as much as I want, but if we can't get something figured out here,
Then
guys,
it's a 1/4
we
mile.
stay with one that we have, and it's a 1/4 mile.
I'll second that.
So I got a motion by Dan, second by Ryan, for non-participating residents, 1 mile setback,
Yeah, residents, active church, business, school,
non-participating.
yes.
Residents, church, business, schools, and game production areas. Further discussion? Ryan. Roll call vote, Patty, please.
Dan?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Wanda?
I can live with that. I'll take that as a yes.
John?
Yes.
John?
I guess I gotta say yes.
You can say no.
And I know that's not where you guys want it to be, but it's a lot better than where you're at in the current zoning ordinance.
Property line, non-participating property line.
Well, I'm gonna propose that we set the property line to the same as the residence. At,
Do we add a
1
mile? At 1 mile?
I'll make a motion to set the property line at 1 mile
Second.
of non-participating properties.
Motion by Ryan, second by Wanda
Discussion.
for non-participating property lines. Further discussion?
By setting that, we're eliminating wind farms totally.
Why? Not with 1 mile.
2 miles from property lines, I think, would be that, yes.
No, 1 mile.
Oh, 1 mile, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, I missed it. Apologize. I vote no.
It's not time to
We
vote
had
yet.
discussion on property.
Sorry.
We've got a motion and a second. Roll call vote, Patty.
Ryan,
Yes.
Wanda,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Don,
No.
John,
No. Three votes for yea and 2 no. Motion passes. For 1 mile for non-participating property lines.
Are we good on the 1.5 times the height for the rest of them?
Then it goes one, so we gotta decide is the municipality setback.
Well, the municipality, they should live with what the property line of the residence is.
I agree.
I move to make that 1 mile. Because it shouldn't just be the people in the country that get the option.
Wanda, do you wanna modify that to also accept the 1.5 times the height for the rest of them? Or is that acceptable to you?
You want me to make a
Well, we only have to vote on the changes.
combination motion?
Right?
Well,
I
no.
like my
No,
motion
we
better.
got- This is just suggestion. I'll stick with your original motion.
Good idea.
which one was that, Wanda?
Municipalities, 1 mile, correct?
Municipality is 1 mile, because it shouldn't be any more than what it is for residences, active churches, businesses, schools, or property lines.
I have a motion by Wanda, second by Dan. Municipalities, 1 mile setback. Further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Now we're gonna do 1.5 times total height for participating residences, active churches, business, schools, game production areas, right-of-ways, property line participants, and pipelines.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Motion by Wanda. Have a
With
second?
the addition of the 1,000 feet or greater for the residences not participating.
Second. Or 1.5 times the height.
Yeah, whichever is greater, minimum 1,000 feet.
I don't know why I would restate it. All right, would you restate your motion, please?
I'll have Brian restate it for me, and then I'll second it.
All right. I move for participating, the participating column, residences, active churches, and
Businesses, schools.
businesses, schools, and game production areas, 1.5 times total height, or 1,000 feet, which is greater.
Right of way and property.
Right away, 1.5 times the height. Property line of participating, 1.5 times total height. And pipelines and utility infrastructure, excluding the transmission lines and feeder lines required for the project, 1.5 times.
We have a motion by Ryan, seconded by Wanda. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Now, do we have to go back to noise?
Let's get this, I just want to get the noise level taken care of at 45 and call it a day.
John, here, one last quick thing. Are we, after all this, are we still good with lakes and rivers at 1 mile?
Yes.
And striking streams.
And striking streams.
Is that a motion? I'll second it.
I'll move that we set lakes and rivers at 1 mile.
Second.
Set.
Motion by Ryan, second by Wanda, to set lakes and rivers setback at 1 mile. Further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Is there anything else in here we need to discuss?
Noise.
Go back to noise.
Oh, we went back. I thought we.
We only have one. Should ask for
I move to make the noise 40
40
dBAs.
dBA. We do DBC.
What's the
Yeah,
difference?
what's the difference? I'm guessing it's less.
No, DBC just has a wider frequency range and covers lower frequencies.
So then 45 dBCs?
How much?
Is that what you're saying?
40 dB. I was asking for a DBC instead of a DBA.
I get that. And I think if it's wider, doesn't it make it lower overall?
No, that's
Mr. Engineer?
It does. That's just covering your frequency range. So,
Why don't we just stay at BBA?
because I think we should just stick with DBC.
How much
It's
is
more
this
suited to the
equipment
noise
gonna
style
cost?
of the systems from these.
I'm sorry?
How much is this equipment going to cost that the county's going to have to buy? to do this?
The difference between a DBA and a DBC reader is not big. It's really just
What's
whether
not
you're
big? 1,000 or 10,000?
shopping.
I think there's
Yes.
something to be said about, I
But
mean,
that's the
Gary,
reason why I
you're
looked
going
at
to
it.
be the one enforcing this, so I think there's something to say.
A or C?
All about how much
DVC.
you want to spend. It doesn't
No.
matter.
Which one costs?
Wanda, just make your motion at DBA and let's see what happens.
Can't remember it anymore.
45 at DBA.
I thought it was 45 dBA. I thought it was 40 dBAs.
You said 40.
I thought I said
Yeah,
40.
You said 40.
That's what I said. He said
So,
45.
40 dBA, you said 40 dBA, and that's from residents or property? Because we right now.
Of course you
Then,
Then-
what about?
I'm just looking at the ordinance.
What about?
Measured at the closest point on the closest non-participating property.
What about just measuring it from the nearest non-participating residents?
And strike the rest of the
I
property.
mean, we I think that would make the most sense.
From the non-participating resident?
I mean, in the spirit of compromise, I mean, we did give a pretty good setback. I mean, again, we started out as a quarter mile setback, we're now at a mile. I think that's a win.
All right, I'm gonna make the motion that we just set the
No,
noise.
you have to, mine has to die by the lack of a second. And then John has to say that, then you can make a motion.
Say your motion again, please.
I said 40 dBAs from the closest non-participating resident.
I have a motion. 40 DBAs, closest non-participating residents. Can I get a second? I have a second by Dan. Further discussion?
I mean, it was at 60 now. Going to 40, I think is moved in the right direction.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign?
Nay.
Motion carries.
You want 35.
How much PVC?
Is there any further discussion on any of the other?
I guess, are we continuing to go or what?
Yes.
You know, just.
Well, we need to get this, through this, I guess. And since I can't push it off PUC here, I guess we just will finish it up tonight.
I guess on road maintenance agreements, I had some stuff I'd like to add. I know they've been in a problem in some of the other areas. It talks about a written agreement, including all subcontractors. The committee shall provide the zoning administrator such written agreements. I would also like to have the highway superintendent have those agreements, because he's going to be the one who's really dealing with all of this. And so,
In what subpart are you putting that?
page 55.
Or are you making a new one?
No, page 55D, road maintenance agreement, A, public roads.
That's what I
And then
asked.
at the bottom, says the permittee shall provide the zoning administrator with such written agreements. I think the highway superintendent should also have a copy of those.
So you want county zoning administrator and highway
I
superintendent?
think that would be a good idea.
I'm okay with that.
I agree.
And then it talks about the permittee shall, prior to use, I really think that should be probably a part of the conditional use permit process. Because, you know, it says just prior to use. What that means is we could approve a conditional use permit and we would never see it. And all this is saying now is we've got to have an agreement before you use it. I really think the road maintenance agreement should be a part of the conditional use permit process. And the reason I say that, in times past, that hasn't happened. I know when we've done some gravel ones, that's got overlooked too. And to me, it should just be a part of the process. So I would have in there, the permittee shall, prior to the conditional use, have approved road haul and make satisfactory written agreements with the appropriate.
Why don't you just say to make it part of the conditional use permit application?
Well, yeah, I would agree, but I think it should be, in there. Yeah. So it should be a part of the process, I agree, and I would like that added in there somewhere. Did that seem reasonable, Gary, or?
Be still under A.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says the permittee shall, prior to the use of the approved road. Yeah. Because I really think it should be a part of the process. When it talks about access roads, number B as well, I would like to have something in there that it talks about section line roads. I know when I went on the tour in Bonholm, there were some cases where turbines were located on county section line roads, and the agreement wasn't in place, and from what I understand, the county of township was required to open those roads at county and township expense, because that's what the law says, and I just don't think that should happen. If we're opening up new section line roads, whether for...
Why don't you add a new subsection?
Well,
Section line,
I think we could just...
and just say, we're not gonna do it.
Second line.
Just add
I just
that.
want to bring that up as a point that...
What it actually does also is if we do it or allow it to be done, then that makes us liable to maintain that road or whatever.
That's why
Where we don't want to become
So just
liable for that.
So how about something to the effect of, in the event a section line road is opened or used for turbine access, a road maintenance agreement or development agreement must be in place prior to condition.
Sounds fair.
Does that sound good? And then that will keep both us protected and the townships protected from having to spend money to open these roads for turbine access. Does that make sense, Gary, or?
You got that?
Yeah, sounds good. So,
On G, what are they gonna do with the study once they get it? Shouldn't they have to file it somewhere?
It should probably go to the zoning administrator.
yeah.
Instead of just doing one and then shred it?
And recorded, how would you say that?
I'd say,
Should be filed with the zoning administrator.
I agree.
Add that to G.
Yeah. On decommissioning, I think in our green line that we have, it has, again, down to the depth of 4 feet below grade. I think we want to strike that. It doesn't say, like, if they're only going to decommission down to the depth of 4 feet.
No
then-
less than 4 feet. Because it just says down 4 feet, so that's a,
Yeah, I'm saying strike that entirely, because
so then
the
it could be
idea
2
is that
feet.
by default, it's all got to go. Unless they get agreements and work out things with the landowners.
I wouldn't read it that way.
So,
I'd read, I could take the top 12 inches out and call it a day.
What was your concern, Ryan?
in our green, in our copy here, the green line, we added that down to a depth of 4 feet below grade. I don't know if we agreed on that last time, but I think that was the one part that we debate a lot about.
Your concern is what?
Well, because the original intent with the default was to have everything removed, and that if there's any exception to that, that would have to be worked out between the landowner and provided as an agreement.
Then put that in there.
So, and I think that is in there. Any agreement for removal to a lesser depth shall be filed as a permanent encumbrance against the legally described parcels.
Then you have to have a depth.
So
You can't just,
that-
you just can't say,
I'm fine with what it is, or maybe a little more than that. I mean, these guys are signing the agreement that they should have to do.
I think it should say no less than 4 feet. Because down to 4 feet means 4 feet. And you know it's not gonna go an inch further than
I agree.
that. What, you agree with me, Don? Write that
There's
down.
nothing saying that.
Are you saying down to a depth no less than 4 feet?
Yeah.
Is what you want.
I mean, there's nothing
But he said he
saying
agreed
when
with
somebody
it.
signs up to this, they can say, hey, I'm gonna sign up, but when you guys leave, I want the 6 feet. I mean,
Well,
they
or
can
they
do that.
10 feet or whatever,
Or
but no less
Okay, so
than 4.
then the line there, any agreement for removal to a lesser
Than 4 feet.
than.
Right, but we're saying they don't
I
have to take it
No,
any
but
more
I'm
than
saying,
4
like,
feet.
if we are saying down to a depth no lesser than 4 feet, then that line down there, so it should be a lesser depth there. It
Should be a greater depth maybe.
Greater depth or any other depth.
That's
Really,
fine,
just
or any other depth.
Any other depth.
Where are you putting it?
On the next
On the
line,
last
on
sentence.
almost the last sentence on the page there. Any agreement for removal to a lesser depth, instead of lesser
To
depth,
any-
any other.
Well, so if they agreed with, okay, we said 4 foot, but the landowner agrees to 10 foot, then he needs to file an encumbrance, even if it would be better for him. I would say to a lesser depth would make sense to do an encumbrance, but if I agreed to a deeper depth than 4 foot, it'd be better.
Yeah, no.
So I
It
get what
just
you're
would be
saying.
nice to know what's down there.
So
I think either way, whether it's 4 feet 1 inch or 4 feet, or if the landowner agrees to 3 feet 8 inches, there should be an encumbrance, no matter what. Because the new purchaser needs to know what's down.
Mhm.
But I don't think we should need to restrict it
You're
to
saying
more
that
than
we should
4
have an
feet.
encumbrance no matter what.
Yeah, there should be, because you're not gonna take 20 feet of concrete out of it.
How about any removal? Any agreement for removal shall be filed and take out to a lesser depth.
So that there's a encumbrance about any.
What is the reasoning for filing that encumbrance?
So
Just so that
people
if
know
they
what's
sell it,
down there.
Well,
They sell the property.
the original ordinance that planning and zoning put together, but really intended that all structures were going to be removed, including the entire foundation, which is, I don't know how many tons of concrete. They go down, I don't know, how deep are they? 10 feet, yeah.
Well, I mean, we're requiring it to be removed a minimum of 4 feet. The landowner could do more if he want. I guess we spent a lot of time on this, let's get an agreement. Let's move on. The landowner could have it require that it's over. I don't know if that's his agreement that he's making. I get the idea that it needs to be removed so it can go back into production.
But what is production? You know?
I like Wanda's original one.
No less than 4 feet. Call it a
Yes.
Sorry.
Wanda made it.
Wanda, second.
All in
I
favor?
guess I'm not really sure why you're making motions on one and not on the one before doing this.
I think because we had agreement on the one prior to this and we're pretty good at it.
And then we told Gary to write it in.
Wanda, you want to restate your idea?
You want me to read the whole thing? A, big A, sub little a, the plan shall specify the procedure by which the applicant or its successor will remove all above-ground structures, including equipment, fencing, roads, and parens, and foundations, down to a depth no less than 4 feet below grade, and restore the area to its pre-construction condition. Removal of access roads, gates, and fences will be at the discretion of the landowner. Any agreement for removal shall be filed as a permanent encumbrance against the legally described parcels for which the waiver is granted. I don't think we need the waiver for which the waiver is granted. Shall be just filed, period. That way everybody knows what's there. So when somebody sells it to somebody and then their child inherits it, then they can figure out what's there.
Motion by Wanda, second by Don. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Got that, Gary?
Yep.
Oh, both same sign.
That's it.
Motion carries.
While we're still on decommissioning, probably in section B, I was wondering if we could have something in there about no on-site disposal.
What, you mean just not leave it lay there?
Well, no, I mean, no digging a hole and throwing everything in on site.
Well, I thought the new thing was they ground them up and put it into roads.
That's just with the blades.
Again,
Concrete, they're gonna
I don't, that was just that's just what a thought I've had. I know when you see a lot of different barns and farmhouses and trees, a lot of times what happens is they just dig a big hole and shove it in and cover it up. And I wonder if it wouldn't be appropriate to have a line such as no disposal of tower or equipment is allowed on the site. All metal, electronic components, blades, and similar equipment must be properly recycled and shipped off-site.
I could live with that.
Disposal. And I mean, that's gonna happen anyway.
I'm sure Gary
You're
got
adding
that.
that to B, A, or
I
where are you?
would say,
E.
B.
Big A, little b.
Okay.
Do you want me to repeat that, Gary?
Yes.
Sorry. No disposal of tower or equipment allowed on site. All metal, electronic components, blades, and similar equipment must be properly recycled or shipped off site to a landfill for proper disposal.
Anything else?
On Big C Financial Resources, the decommissioning costs, do we know where that's going to be placed other than held by the county? Or in an interest-bearing account presumably, or?
It's gonna be in a bank account by our
Well,
choosing.
well, I get that, but don't you think it should say in an interest-bearing account? Let's add that.
Okay. Gary, you got that?
Preferably in a
On
high,
page
high interest
57.
account.
What?
High interest account.
The highest that it can get. Big C, little a?
Yes.
Okay.
Financial resource C,
What page? Are you still on the same page?
57, yeah, that says amounts may be reduced at the discretion of the county if an updated cost estimate shows a decrease. First, I wish that would ever happen, but second, when we talk about the county, who are we talking about?
I think it should be a majority vote of the county commission.
I think so too, but I just think it's, we should specify who the county is. Would that be a county commission or would that be a board of adjustment? What would you recommend?
No, that should be the county commission.
And frankly, I think you could strike if an updated cost estimate shows an increase.
Yeah,
That's not going to
That's
happen
not going to happen.
in my lifetime.
Termination of use, decommissioning of turbines.
What page?
57. Decommissioning of turbines must occur in the event this is not used for 6 consecutive months. Instead of must, would a may be appropriate?
Well, then why put it in there at all?
Well, I
It's
guess,
may.
I mean, if we, I mean, they're built and.
It's either must or shall. But if it's may,
Well, I think we heard, did we, a month or so ago, of a solar farm, she said it built a year ago and didn't come online yet. I mean, that's the issue.
that's not what he's saying.
Well, I guess.
He's saying the opposite of that.
My thought is, you know, ordering parts anymore is a 6-8 month thing for normal parts, specialty parts. It could very well be over 6 months, and I understand people's concern. I mean, this is something that's already built and operating, and do we want to have it built, and if it's not used in 6 months and tore down? I mean, just,
Well,
that makes sense.
maybe it's, I think part of this is that you just don't want it to go, you know,
Forever.
bidding wars.
It just stand
Maybe
there
it's
forever.
a clause in there or something where if they don't come and say, oh, something's happened, we're gonna need more time, if they don't come back within 6 months or something about getting an extension or something like
I think the point of that is so that they just don't leave them stand there and not tear them down.
I could, but it's 6 months, is that the right time?
What I'm thinking is that 6 months with no communication or no indication that they're going to bring it online, you know, say, if it falls into disrepair, you know, problem, but if
what
it
happens
comes
if
to
they
us,
spin the blades around one time and they go, oh, made it work? But
But on
it's
the
good
other
for
hand-
another 6 months,
but
and
on the
then
other
they
hand,
spin the
it's gonna
blades
take us-
around one more time,
Could
and
we
it's
put
never
something in there
deconditioned.
that the Board of Adjustment may extend this? at its
yes, that's what I'm
discretion?
saying, it's like doing an extension at our discretion,
Let's
because,
do that then.
yeah, because, they could be like, oh, it's not, we're not gonna be able to get this done until 9 months, you know?
Yeah,
So,
so everybody's fine with that in that phrase in there?
yeah.
That yours?
Page 58?
Yeah, I guess this one where it kind of talks about the county going after the landowner for removal. I don't know if I feel right about that. I just,
Why?
well, I
Why
mean,
we should just leave them sit there idle?
no, I
The
think
funds,
it's,
the funds should be available.
yeah,
And if the wind tower people just leave, the landowner has received payment for having their towers there. So the funds are gonna be available. However, the landowner should be liable to make sure that he gets rid of them,
Because he got the benefit.
because he had the benefits coming off of it.
And remember, we're gonna, like, ideally in this situation, the county already has the funds here, so the
Exactly.
landowner should be able to come to the commission to get that assistance, to get that removed. So
Correct.
it's just a matter of making sure that all the parties are involved in cleaning this up.
Yes.
I just don't like the thought of.
If they skip the country, who's going to be responsible to make sure that the project gets cleaned up? It's not, it shouldn't be the county, and the funds are available. So why shouldn't the landowner, that's,
I just, you know, my point I'm making is, you know, we're talking 20 years, 30 years down the road, right? A lot of the people who are entered in this agreement probably won't be around. And somebody's son who had nothing to do with this and maybe didn't receive a lot of benefit.
Too bad.
Well, but now the county goes after him.
all we're gonna do is go after him, tell him he's gotta line it up to get it done.
I just got an issue.
And the money's supposed to be there. It's not supposed to be everybody else's fault in the county.
You get what I'm saying? The county is now, I'm going after you for what your dad did, or your mom and dad did 35 years ago, and now you have.
How is that different than anything
I
else?
see it as a vehicle of making sure it gets cleaned up. And it's like, it's what do we do if we don't have this in place? How do we get the landowner to start paying it up? Well, this
You
is a
don't.
way of getting it to happen. You say it's going after, I'm like, kind of thinking it's just like, it's like a level of that responsibility there, so. It, you know, and ideally, the money is already there for the cleanup, so the landowner shouldn't be under some great burden.
Or his successor.
Does that have to be laid out in a will that makes it?
No, because it's in here. You take the land as you get it. If it had a mortgage, you take it with the mortgage. If it has a wind turbine on, you take it with the wind turbine and assume that grandpa or dad did something good with that money. Other than fritter it away. Anything else, Dan?
When we're talking about conditional use permit application requirements, section D talks about topographical maps with intervals of 2 feet. I've probably use maps more than a lot of people. A 2-foot contour interval, the map would be effectively useless because there'd be so many lines, it would just be nothing but lines. And most of the time, they're at 50, or depending on 150,000 map or 250,000 map. I would just say topographical map with contour intervals. 2 foot, I don't even think they make maps with. So that would mean if the ground goes from here to here, 2 foot difference, there's a contour line. So a hill would be nothing but line. Yeah. So
how would you propose that we say that?
Topographical with contour intervals.
Showing
Because-
surface water drainage patterns.
Yeah, because that's what topographical maps do.
Let's take out at intervals of 2 feet. Showing. Now we'll be sure. At intervals of 2 feet.
I've never seen that.
I think that comes from the GIS systems. You can pretty much let it do whatever, and I think that's where.
Well, but, and you can do that if you precisely get in, but I'm talking like a bigger map with it, you wouldn't be able to see anything, so. And if it's in GIS, it'll already be in there, I don't think that 2 foot adds much.
What about page 59, the green on that?
Permit expiration, per codified law, that SB 157 from 2020, that changed the law to is it 2 years, Gary?
Yeah.
So, and it specifically says any county law to the contrary is null and void. So that one we should just probably follow state law. Instead of 3 years and move that to 2.
Which one was that?
59 under section 2917. Right above that.
2 years instead of 3?
Yep.
Yeah, and that's for, I don't know, but it was SD 157 from 2020. Is that correct, Gary? That's what it says with zoning, and so just follow that. And that's consistent with all conditional use permits, building permits, or variances.
And we're good with the green second paragraph?
I'm having second thoughts on the green. A little bit. Maybe kind of get back a bit. The second part, or to a third party which the applicant has entered as part of purchase agreement.
This is your idea.
I know, but 2 days later, I read some more interesting articles.
And I think the intent behind this is we want to deal with the person we're dealing with.
Exactly.
And we don't, we shake hands and we agree, and then it gets sold to this person and this person, and then 5 companies down the road, we say, we never agreed to that. And
Yeah, so I was thinking about at the end of parent company, period, and striking the rest of the green.
Say that again.
So on the green.
Or can you just read what you want to say? Read what you want to say.
Okay. Well. For the purpose of this ordinance, any sale or transfer of the permit from the applicant to any other purpose or entity within 5 years of the date that the permit is issued shall be considered a prima facie evidence that the permit was obtained for the purpose of selling, transferring, or brokering the permit, except that no transfer to an affiliated or subsidiary entity of the applicant or its parent company, period. Board of Adjustment may hear and grant exceptions to this rule in the case of unforeseen life events that may force the sale of the operation.
So you want to cross out which part?
Just the part in the green that, or to the third party with which the applicant has entered into a power purchase agreement, which will be considered a sale or transfer of the permit under this section. So, just getting rid of even going to a third party that they're selling the power.
I think that's more in line with what it was originally. So.
Yeah.
But if there's an affiliated or sub company, that's fine.
Subsidiary, yes.
Subsidiary.
Still under the parent company, the original company.
I mean, and I think the intent is, these companies get bought and sold all the time, and we end up with some company out of China that it's easier to just go bankrupt and figure out the issues.
But what happens if Northwestern Public Service comes to them at 4.5 years and makes them an offer they can't refuse to purchase a wind farm?
The adjustment may be.
I tell them to wait 6 months.
Still an exception.
Okay.
In the
They
case
have
of
to come to us.
unforeseen life events,
Okay,
that
I-
may force the sale.
Just want to clarify.
Doesn't completely block off, but they have to come to us.
Okay.
That's me.
I'm good with that. Okay. Good with the last paragraph? We could take a 5-minute break at this point in time. Motion?
So moved.
Motion by Dan, second by Ryan, to take a 5 to 10 minute break.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor, aye?
For your glut for 23? Okay.
This is what no one's doing. I can't change what's on there.
So, makes sense. We gotta wait till the next one. All right.
We were all so concerned about
It wouldn't be.
I know we gotta get yeah.
Yeah, no, I gotta be realistic. You did want to search everything. I know, I'm a bigger person. I used to look to find 15. It was the same thing, but last night, we discussed it 2 weeks ago, what you guys are talking
All I hear is what the father gives us.
This is going forward.
Because this one that's here, that's under the old ordinance. That's a quarter mile.
That if we could maybe do something. You guys are working ahead of time, you kind of grant them anything applying. But you think is it, you know, for the rest of the time, I think you guys can start to work on this. Yeah, that's what.
I appreciate it.
I'm glad that, like I sound here, I don't understand it all. I research it out, I don't know about 45 to 30, 60, you know, I don't really understand it. Setbacks, you know, I think we're pretty clear about it. No, and that's where you gotta be pretty So you guys, you went to a lot of work to get as far as you did here. You did a good job. Yeah, no, I mean, it's come a long ways, you know, from what at first, you know, you started with.
He follows me everywhere around the county. I see him everywhere.
I think get overwhelmed. You're driving, at least you're driving like, you know, it's nice. I was kind of disgusted. Because the last time I thought, oh, God, he's terrible. He would have told me more. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we could. Well, the county was.
You know, and that's where I've been a couple things I've been talking about. It's this way, that way, you don't know where you're at, you know, and that's where, but I think out of everybody that's here, I think that, you know, most research and insight, that's what work with you guys. You know, board, you know, or, yeah, you know. Oh, yeah, because, you know, it's pretty realistic anyway, you know, like, you figure, and then, say it's unrealistic, you know, I mean, something a little more, something a little less, you're kind of right in the middle of the deal, and you kind of stay in the middle, it's a pretty good deal. Wild darn feet, guys. God, your head's at home, your head's morning, and your neck will be sore by tomorrow. God, you know, they're shaking their head. Oh, it aggravates me. It's ridiculous. It says I can't blurt out, you know, seriously, somebody else on that. We all get that. Definitely. You know, there's gone. They don't want nothing. They want to, come with it.
Oh, yeah, they're fun.
You know, you know, but you know, you take, he's got his family's name or his name, and you take what they got. I don't have to be on this wall. Related to something, you know, but I saw jumps. The county is playing, and he's got a bunch, you know, not as much as a bunch. And I know he's told them county, oh, God, you don't like that, that's the best thing. He's more worried about the gravel, you know, because he's in the gravel. You just think of it, you got a contract with some all the gravel, I mean, millions and millions of yards. I can't get all that on this, just always up for that, you know. Get started, they get started. Well, the problem is like, you know, the generations sign up, they'll be long gone before. Like a young parents got themselves for work. That's where they signed on the dotted line. I guess they should have researched
Then it's not.
Okay, please take your seats. Continue on.
Isn't that past your bedtime?
Way past. Way past.
I move to go back into regular session.
Second. Motion by Wanda, second by Don. Go back into regular session. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
I move to approve the claims.
I was gonna ask if we can visit one last thing on that ordinance.
Of course you do.
5 minutes, Ryan.
Okay, I really just want to change, I only want to change one thing, and that's on the noise level. I want to change it from a DBA to a DBC.
No, we voted on it already.
I'm making a motion to change it to a DBC, and I'd like to have the discussion of why, because I don't think you understand the technical background here. A DB,
Let's make that motion to open that up.
I have a motion by Ryan to change the DBA to DBC. Can I get a second?
I would second it, just so we all know what A and C are.
A second by Wanda.
But I have the clock running.
Discussion?
okay, so,
Vote.
it's, we're having further
We had a
discussion.
motion and a second.
Then they have to go
And have to have
back.
discussion.
Well, I think we should vote on whether we're opening it up. And then have that discussion.
I
Because
think
we've
that's
already
what the-
discussed
I think that's what the motion was. Now we have to vote.
So what we're gonna end up doing is discussing about this for, which we already discussed for a long period of time. I would just call the question that we vote, and if we vote to open it up, yes, then we talk about it. If we vote to not open it up, we move on.
So.
Motion by Ryan to reopen to discuss A versus C. Second by me. Now there's a vote.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carries.
Now tell us the difference between A and C.
Okay, so the difference between A and C is a filter is the frequency response. An A, okay, so dB is a nonlinear scale. It's to help linearize our perception of these signals. An A response,
Dumb it down.
an A response runs from around 200 hertz to around 10 kilohertz. It is a filter that is used largely by acoustical equipment and used for sound engineering for acoustics. It is attuned towards the human ear, period. there's B, C, D ratings, multiple ratings. Now, the other common one that you can get, that your most sound meters are tuned towards, is C weighting. A C weighting runs from about 31 hertz, way lower than an A rating, but its cutoff is lower as well, around it's about 8,000 hertz. Why do we have a C rating? A C rating is used more commonly in industrial environments for making sure that you have work safety situations, and it has a flat response and catches low frequency much better. Impact noises and all these different noises that are more common to industrial equipment. So I feel like that's a better measure of the noise. If you actually, what you're going to find, if you do a C rating versus an A rating, your A rating is going to pick up things like noise off the speaker and stuff more, wind noise and stuff. Your C rating is going to be more tuned towards that equipment. And so I feel like that's a better measure for what we're measuring. And so I just suggest that we simply change DBA to DBC. And we do that for both small energy systems and the large energy systems, because I think we need to be equivalent across those.
Does that make it lower then?
No, dBs are dBs. No, it's still 40, just a different frequency range.
I don't understand what you just don't want that.
Mr. Chair, I think part of, and I appreciate Ryan, you're an engineer and you look at things differently, and I can appreciate that, but again, our zoning ordinance, I think, should be able to be picked up by the average person and read and understand it. We could quadruple the pages of this and get so deep into the weeds that.
I'm not asking for any addition on any character, change of one character.
I have more before I get interrupted. And again, I appreciate where you're coming from, but I don't think it makes a whole bit of difference. I think we need to keep this simple so people can read. DBA, DVD, DBZ, I mean, come on. Not necessarily.
Okay, then
I appreciate your
I suggest that we just get rid of DA entirely. We just say DB, period.
Why?
I think we gotta have a scale, one or the other.
Exactly.
So,
You use the right equipment to measure the right
so
things.
can I get a motion to change?
Well, let's go back to which one is more expensive for the county to.
I don't think that matters.
There is no price difference in these units, okay? It's just a weighting, it's just which filter are you using. I think I covered that earlier. If we really want to be precise, we'd use a Z rating, but those things are expensive.
We
Okay.
We don't want to do that.
We want to buy the $10,000 system, not the $12,000 system. Monitor this.
I just think we should stay standardized for whatever, most ordinances or whatever the PUC uses.
Okay, so
What does the PUC use?
And this is exactly it. The DBC is a standardized unit. It is
So
what
then
it
why
is.
did you write DBA into the proposed ordinance, and why is our old ordinance DBA also? I'm just asking that question. I don't know.
Is it gonna make much, I mean, what is the difference if we use one or the other? How is that gonna change in anything? I mean, could we just say decibels and leave it even more general?
That is essentially a DBZ weighting. The Z weighting is a zero weighting, no filter. So decibels means.
So I either need a motion to change or to leave that as.
I move to change the measurements of DBA to DBC.
Okay, I have a motion by Ryan to change from DBA to DBC. Can I get a second? Hearing no second, motion fails. We stay the same. Okay, moving on through the agenda, we are at claims.
I would move to approve claims.
motion to approve claims, second by Wanda, second by Dan. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
I move to approve the second quarter mental illness report.
Got a motion by Wanda, second by Don, to approve the second quarter MI report. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Can I get a motion to approve the July 24th auditor treasurer's report and pool cash report?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Wanda. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Meeting videos. Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I just have gotten a lot of complaints and emails. Our quality is not what it should be. We got missing videos. I know the last one, our microphones are an issue as well. I would like to do an RFP to upgrade our sound system and our video capacity. I just think we owe it to our citizens to, have a video that they can hear and listen to.
I have had a number of people comment that people sit back and then talk rather than speak right into the microphone, because apparently they don't like to hear themselves.
What about the videos that aren't, that we?
That's kind of critical.
I have nothing if not critical.
Let's talk about that a little bit. One of the meetings that we had lost was due to a server that was not running. So that's, we can change the cameras up here. That's not going to change things because the camera was working fine at that time. The microphones, okay, we do have a problem here. I'm not entirely sure. From what I understand, there's one of the POE switches back there is not quite handling things correctly. We can't run all the microphones at once. So yes, I agree with you there. There's some equipment that we need to fix here. But also additionally, I had just talked to John Anderson about getting Teams onto that laptop up there so that we can start running everything as a Teams video. That should help with some things, but the microphone system is still problematic. I agree with you a little bit. You can't seem to run all the microphones at once. That's problematic. It'd be nice to have the speakers working back out there. That's going to take some investigation to understand how that system works, because somehow in the change-ups in the last few years, we've lost that knowledge within the county. And so I'm not entirely sure how that runs, and our IT people don't know exactly either, so we have to go in and figure that out. But I agree with you.
Until Lisa helped figure it out, did she?
Well, what she did, she had streamed the YouTube video onto the TV over there, and so that worked. It worked okay, but that's why the last meeting we had set a huge delay getting uploaded and then streamed out.
And even, Mr. Chair, even watching the last video parts of it, the microphone on the computer was working, and there was probably some coarse language being used. We have a camera up here that we're not using for some reason. I just really would like to do an RFP, get the system up and running, so we can have, better quality videos.
What would be in the proposal though? Or what would be the request parameters? Do we have a set of specifications?
Have functioning videos.
Yeah, it's something that works.
Right now we have, I guess I just gotta say it, it's unacceptable to me. We owe our citizens, if we talk about transparency, our videos aren't working, nobody can hear anything. The microphones need to be upgraded. It needs to be done. I think I would be fine delegating it to Gary to do an RFP proposal and have somebody come in and give us an estimate on what it would cost to update our sound system, microphone, and camera system.
I think that I think in order to have our systems, I would say not patched together, we definitely need John Anderson involved.
Sure.
And
Let's set a timeline, because it's been 2 years and we still don't have an accessible.
Okay, how
acceptable
about
system,
Gary?
so-
Can maybe you, me, and John get together and we can talk about it?
Sure.
Because
Let's
there's
bring a
more,
proposal
there's more
to
than
the
just
meeting.
the microphones involved in here, I think.
I'm just gonna say one thing here, and I've watched the city commission meetings over and over and over, and they are very, very well produced, and
They also have 3 IT people.
I'm just.
Well, actually, the
I'm just
person that
saying.
does it is not their IT person.
Mm-hmm.
It's, the last time it was one of the police department people.
Well, whatever we need to do, but I'd say we need to set a deadline where by this date, we're gonna have a decision and move forward, because I wanted to review some of the planning commission meetings, you know, to see the reasoning behind some of these, and it doesn't exist because it didn't get recorded. And I understand, you know, problems happen and all of that, but I think we owe it to our citizens to have a reliable video that they can listen to. At the very least, we need to have our microphone situation figured out so we can all use the microphones. I think that's a start, but I would say in a month, we need to have, you know, we need to have something we can take action on. So
Well, I would
actually,
I just want to say, maybe next week, let's get together. And let's see what we can put together, or see what we can do as to what the best direction would be, and we can bring that to the next meeting. Okay?
like it on the next meeting, yeah.
We'll
on the
continue this
agenda.
on the next meeting.
Yeah.
And we'll get together next week.
Sounds good.
I would like to maybe have Alyssa be on that.
Yes,
She's
that
kind
should
of-
be really good.
Yeah.
Alyssa would be good.
One other issue we're having too is that a lot of these videos shut off when we go into executive session, and a lot of times we make motions after that, and that's a part of the official meeting. And prior to that, we always had that on there, that it restarts, and I think we need to continue that, because there is times we have good discussion where we do make motions, so that needs to continue to be the case.
Okay. Firewall replacement.
Okay, so, we have in this building here, a firewall that is going to be essentially obsoleted. I believe it's going to be in October, when pretty much all support ends for it. That makes it a vulnerable point for intrusion. It's also possibly part of the reason why we have some internet issues here in the building. Might even be partially why we've lost parts of video. So we need to get that firewall replaced. I had John go out and get a quote on a new firewall, and it also includes some of the switches. This would be really good to double check base with them on this, because I don't think, yeah, these are not any of the PoE switches, so. But this is essentially the upgrade for new equipment for the firewall for the government center, which is kind of your first line of defense in cybersecurity.
You need new firewalls for the safety center.
Those are not, yeah, those are newer, so just this firewall. That would be something that would be interesting in the future if we can continue to improve, that we can maybe reduce the amount of across this, if we start combining types. So for now, this is essentially what we would need for the next 5 years at least.
And we've gotten new computers, some offices, and I've gone through this company.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons we do RTI. This is already the government quote, so it's already been pre-bidded.
Yeah, I'd agree. My only concern is the SB 187 that is supposed to be coming to counties. Is this going to integrate properly? I don't know that answer. I'm sure it probably will.
Integrate properly.
But, okay, so they're gonna do a new system for counties and municipalities. They looked at $7.5 million. Is this gonna still function?
A new system of.
For emails and for cybersecurity?
Just firewall.
This is hardware equipment that services just.
Then I have no issue.
Yeah, this is.
You might want to check with that cybersecurity, because a firewall could be included in that.
It could be, but I've been looking into that. We don't have information on grants, and unfortunately, by the time we get to December, this firewall could be a cyber hole for us. Be a vulnerability. So that's the one dark part side. We'd like to be,
But we
see
might
if
be
we can
able
get
to
some of these
purchase
other.
this to get some funding back from that.
Gary, has there been any update that you're aware of on that?
No, I haven't heard anything.
From what I understand, the Attorney General's office has assumed responsibility. I don't know if there's somebody we could reach out and say, hey, we're planning on purchasing this equipment. You know, I'd hate to have us do this and a week later, here's the grant. You know, I wish the state would be better with us, but we need it, so it's not that we have much of a choice.
On the converse though, we do have a much more expensive quote that we shared with you for that. It's really focusing on the sheriff's office and stuff. That might line into that better. We can get more money out of that.
So is your recommendation to purchase this now?
My recommendation is to do this now simply because, as we,
I move
by the end of the
approval.
year,
Move
we'll
approval.
no problem.
Got a motion to approve to move forward with the new firewall for the government center. Can I get a second?
Second.
A second first by Dan, second by Don.
Is it in
Further
our
discussion?
I don't think we have a budget for
That
this.
is our budget.
They get out of commissioners.
It'll come out of data.
And no, this is,
Well, let me ask you, is there a different way? Do we have money to pay for it?
So, I mean, it's not in the budget for, data, so we'll supplement at the end of the year.
You know, Ryan, it seems like this is something that's, we won't have money budgeted if we get hacked either.
yeah.
So,
Right.
I mean,
That-
I get
we
what
get
you're
hacked,
saying,
it's gonna cost a lot more
You're
than-
saying, Wanda, I understand.
Yeah, and I do want to double check on this, but a lot of the total cost here is under licensing for 5 years. And so I think some of this cost just goes over 5 years.
So
Additionally-
it's not so bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and additionally, this is a price with installation and help already, so there's no extra installation costs on this. So,
Okay, so I have a motion, second, to purchase the new firewall for the government center. Any further discussion?
Just that we're gonna check with the state on that, because I wanna say some of that licensing.
You want to check with
is
that?
gonna be,
We can follow up
Yeah.
next week and we get together.
Sounds good.
go ahead.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries to purchase the new firewall. Okay, at this time, I would open up for public comments. And again, we're not going to listen to anything about wind. If you got something else you want to discuss, we're more than happy to listen.
We've had enough about wind.
Seeing none, public comment is closed. Commission updates. Dan, you got anything for us?
No, the South Dakota Veterans Council is gonna meet in Yankton tomorrow. If you're a veteran, or a family member of a veteran, invited for a free meal at 11:30. Meeting to take place at 1 o'clock. There's gonna be claims representatives there, as well as the director of the Department of Veterans Affairs, hospital in Sioux Falls, as well as, I believe, Greg Woodcock, the secretary of the VA from Department of Veterans Affairs from South Dakota will be there. So if you have any questions on claims or anything, that'd be the place to be tomorrow. VFW, 209 Cedar Street, barbecue brisket meal at 11:30. The meeting starts at 1 o'clock.
Don, you got any updates?
No.
Ryan?
No.
Wanda?
I actually have some news. Oddly enough, I know.
About
The
better
purchase
children?
agreement has been signed relative to the Irene property. We're waiting on the, go ahead from the title company and then that's done.
Good deal. I don't have anything either.
Then I move that we go into executive session for poor relief issues pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2 and 28-13 and 28-13-1.3.
Second.
Motion by Wanda, second by Dan to go into executive session. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
That is an annoying noise. Sudden onset photodelirious diabetes. One day I wasn't, the next day I am.
I know, that's what we're.
That includes me?
That's what they're hoping. No, not smoking. Not smoking it, not chewing it, not inhaling it, not putting it. No, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna try and control it right now. Or I'm gonna die. If it's my turn, it's my turn.
Everything going smooth? Yep. All right. Just want to make sure that we get the last part of the meeting.
What?
All right, thanks.
Oh, yeah. It's not perfect, but.
Essentially, you just try to stick to the facts.
Right.
Thank you.
Sometimes there's something fun. Oh, yes. So, not that they're going to give a crap if we're here or not, obviously. But they will be able to know, and they might be a little sensitive if we're sitting here. I don't know. At this point, I don't know. I have. That's why, yeah.
Should have seen the county commission when they were doing the CAFOs for the hog barns.
Oh, I can
Because,
imagine.
well, first off, per the ordinances, things are supposed to happen in a certain order. Yeah, they didn't do it in order. They were given variances for the setbacks, like, it was candy.
Oh, my.
And the first 7 of them that came through surround my house. I live in Mission Hill, like, all the way
now,
around.
Scotty,
So-
come on.
What?
Tell the truth, how
They-
far away are?
Okay, they're not right next to my house.
Okay. Let's
But-
not scatter your mouth like you're supposed to.
No, they're
Okay. There's
out
one
around
a mile
Mission
from
Hill.
you.
A mile is nothing.
When it does, when the order goes, and I gotta admit, it's not often. You know, where's the wind blowing? Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, that's right.
You know.
Goes right at my house too.
Yeah, I know.
From every direction?
Well, not every direction, but I have feedlots all the way around me.
Yeah.
So I either get cows or pigs or my cows in my yard, what doesn't make you difference.
Are all of the lots
They're all owned by farmers.
One of them doesn't live, well, of the first 7, I'm just gonna talk about those. He has a house here, but he doesn't really live here, right?
Yeah, he does.
He does? He
Yep.
lives here now?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
That's for the last 5 years.
No. Okay. I remember one was put basically right in his front yard, for the most part. So, right?
Yep, yeah, they put nursery right in the front yard.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, if you want to put it in your own front yard and it doesn't affect anybody else, fine.
Oh, goody.
I move that we go back into regular session following executive session.
Second.
I would say that now that we're back into regular session.
We're not yet. Did you make a motion?
I made a motion and it was seconded by Ryan.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
5-0.
5-0.
I make a motion to pay 4 Yankton County mental illness charges, 24-03-001, 24-03-002, 24-3-003, and 24-03-004 in the amount of $500 each for an aggregate amount of $2,000.
Second.
2,000. Got a motion by Wanda, seconded by Ryan. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Did we already vote to reschedule the September meeting for convention?
No,
We did reschedule that.
to the Thursday, right?
Of that same week.
You're gonna finalize tonight, you said,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
Well, you don't have to make it. I don't think you have to make a motion.
I think this is for the
I'll just put
viewing
it in the
public.
minutes. so.
Putting the minutes and reviewing public, our September meeting will be held, the second meeting in September will be held on September 19th,
Thursday night.
Thursday, the 19th.
And is that the second reading then of the song?
No, yeah.
Third,
Not the first.
third of September.
Third
Second
meeting.
The second. So the third is the second,
Yeah,
not the second meeting on the 19th.
no,
Okay.
and it may be the first night.
So much fun. At this time, I would accept the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion by Dan, second by Don. Adjourn, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Any day better for you next week, Ryan?
It was 6.